The Sorcerer, The Path to Transcendence starting from Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401 Loki. In this gravity, even the slightest movement of the Deadpools became incredibly difficult, forcing them to collapse helplessly on the ground, their curses raging uncontrollably. Inside the Space-Time Administration, Mr. Paradox watched the scene unfold on the screen, his face dark and gloomy, as if water could drip from it. He had never imagined that these Deadpools, whom he had carefully assembled, would be unable to even approach Wes. He had thought that with their formidable immortality and frenzied fighting style, they would surely be able to cause Wes some trouble, but reality dealt him a heavy blow. The Deadpools were naturally a crushing force against ordinary people, but against an opponent as powerful and cunning as Wes, they proved vulnerable. However, Mr. Paradox wasn't going to give up. He had a plan in mind. Just as Wes's attention was focused on the Deadpools, pinned down by gravity, a dagger suddenly appeared from thin air. With a fierce aura, it stabbed silently like a bolt of black lightning, swiftly piercing Wes's back. Its speed was so extreme that it seemed to be on the verge of piercing its target. Ding! However, just as the dagger was about to make contact with Wes's back, it struck an invisible wall, sending ripples through the air, unable to penetrate Wes's defenses. "Long time no see, Loki," Wes said calmly, not turning around, as if he had already anticipated the attacker's identity. It was Loki who had launched the attack. He had expected his long-planned attack to succeed, but he hadn't expected Wes to block it so easily. Not wanting to fight any longer, he retreated immediately, putting distance between them and Wes, watching him warily. "When did you discover me?" Loki asked, frowning, puzzled. He was quite confident in his concealment magic. After all, he was Asgard's finest assassin, adept at concealing himself and striking unexpectedly. He had inflicted countless casualties with his skill. But this time, Weiss had easily seen through his tactics, leaving him deeply perplexed. Weiss made no attempt to explain. Instead, he glanced at Loki's Space-Time Administration uniform with a half-smile and said, with a hint of sarcasm, "It seems you've become someone's lackey." Loki threw his hands up helplessly and quickly defended himself. "Don't be so harsh. It's just a temporary partnership." Weiss knew full well that Loki wasn't the type to cooperate with others. He was known for his cunning schemes and clearly had ulterior motives. As Weiss pondered this, a soft ding sounded, and the Loki who had just been speaking to him was revealed to be a phantom, instantly dissipating into thin air. Loki's true form seized this opening and launched another attack. Like a ghost, he dashed towards Weiss, a pair of razor-sharp short swords appearing in his hands. He swung them with a flash of cold light, bearing them head-on. "A trifle," Weiss scoffed. A fierce thunderstorm erupted, centered around him. The thunderstorm was mighty, with thick bolts of lightning ripping through the air like silver snakes, crackling and spreading in all directions. The scene reminded Loki of his brother, Thor, whose powerful lightning force was both familiar and somewhat fearful to him. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. With his nimble movement, he dodged and weaved through the dense stream of lightning, managing to evade many attacks. Loki's physical skills had always been underestimated. His movements were incredibly agile. As he dodged and evaded, he constantly sought his next opportunity to strike, his mind never wavering. Unfortunately, none of these subtle plots could be hidden from Wes. Furthermore, with his keen senses, he sensed another person lurking in the shadows, waiting for an opportunity to strike. "Death drain." As Wes uttered the words, a gray mist instantly spread from him. Wherever it passed, all life was instantly drained. Even the solid rock gradually turned grayish-white, as if it had lost its life force. The Deadpools, already pinned to the ground by gravity, were instantly drained of their vitality upon contact with the mist, perishing instantly. However, their miraculous regenerative abilities brought them back to life, and this cycle repeated itself. As the mist absorbed the Deadpool's life force, it grew thicker and spread faster, like a predatory beast, expanding its territory in all directions. Seeing this, Loki, aware of the mist's power and unwilling to touch this strange object, quickly dodged it. At that moment, his eyes flickered to the right, a subtle movement Weiss captured with pinpoint accuracy. Weiss's mind reacted, and the gray mist shifted, surging toward Loki's gaze. As the mist drew closer, a woman's figure gradually emerged. It was Loki from another universe, a female Loki. Asshole, the female Loki, upon seeing this, erupted in fury. She knew Loki had deliberately glanced at her, clearly using her as bait to lure the dangerous grain mist away. This filled her with rage and resentment, but she couldn't settle with Loki at the moment. She had to find a way to deal with the crisis. Loki's lip curled, a look of triumph on his face. He wielded a pair of short swords, and with a flash of his body, he created several clones, all charging towards Weiss, intent on taking her down in one fell swoop. Weiss, on the other hand, seemed completely unaware, watching the clone charge at him, only to be stabbed by the daggers it wielded. Seeing this, Loki's smile froze instantly. He thought to himself, oh no. This feels wrong. He immediately realized he'd only stabbed the clone. At that moment, alarm bells rang in Loki's heart, but before he could react, it was too late. Boom! With a resounding explosion, the stabbed clone exploded. The immense force was like a bomb, sending up a massive mushroom cloud and billowing smoke and dust that spread out in all directions. When the smoke and dust gradually cleared, Loki was left covered in wounds, his once exquisite armor now tattered. He stood there in a state of disarray, gasping for breath, his eyes filled with shock and resentment. He hadn't expected his plan to not only fail, but also end up costing him his life. This was truly a case of losing more than gaining. Chapter 402 Anti-Tracking. Loki, the god of trickster, renowned for his cunning and manipulative tactics, found himself in a horrific predicament. He had never imagined he would be tricked. This, for the proud and arrogant Loki, was like a slap in the face. He was filled with shame and resentment, feeling ashamed and humiliated as he could be. If it weren't for his frost giant bloodline, which granted him a stronger physique and a degree of resilience, the force of the explosion would have shattered him. Even so, Loki was covered in wounds, his once ornate clothing tattered and stained with dust and blood. He looked as utterly drenched as a drowned rat just out of the mud. Weiss hadn't yet used his full strength. He had, more or less, shown some mercy for Thor's sake. Just as Loki was secretly fuming over his predicament, the ground around him suddenly and violently shook. The entire surface heaved and swayed like a raging sea, making it impossible to stand still. As if manipulated by a mysterious and powerful force, the surrounding rocks began to rapidly converge and merge towards a single point. In the blink of an eye, a giant 100 meters tall appeared out of thin air. Its massive body was like a towering mountain, blocking out the sky and casting a vast shadow. Its fist was even larger than one could imagine, like a solid mountain, covered with jagged rocks and appearing incredibly solid. The giant raised its mountain-like fist high and, with overwhelming force, brought it down towards Loki. The whistling wind sounded like the roar of death, as if it would crush Loki completely. Damn it, Loki, horrified, gathered all his magical energy, muttering to himself, and waving his hands rapidly, he endeavored to create a protective shield in front of him to block the giant's overwhelming attack. A green magical shield instantly formed before him. But the giant's strength was too great, beyond anyone's imagination. The moment its fist made contact with the shield, it was like a high-speed truck hitting a fragile glass wall. With a resounding bang, the shield collapsed instantly. Fortunately, though the shield only lasted a moment, it bought Loki a precious moment, allowing him to use his agility to roll sideways and avoid the fatal blow. The giant's fist slammed down hard on the ground, instantly kicking up clouds of dust and sand. The surrounding ground was like being struck by a massive bomb, creating a massive crater. Debris flew, smoke billowed, and the entire earth shook violently as if struck by a small earthquake. The once flat ground dropped several meters, and everything around was shattered by the powerful impact. The giant, enraged by the mist strike, twisted his already ferocious features even further. His enormous eyes flashed a red glow of rage. He began to swing his fists frantically, hammering down on the ground with a rapid and frenzied rain of blows. Bang! Boom! Boom! Deafening explosions echoed in succession. Each blow ripped a deep crater in the ground, shattering the surrounding earth into pieces. Sand and stone flew everywhere, creating a chaotic and terrifying scene. The once clear vision was completely obscured by the thick smoke and dust. Everything around them was blurred. All that could be heard was the giant's frantic roar and the thud of his fists pounding the ground. It was impossible to tell east from west, west from north, or see anyone else. Inside the bustling command room of the Temporal Variance Administration, the atmosphere was oppressive to the extreme. Mr. Paradox frowned, beads of sweat already forming on his forehead. He was oblivious to the sweat trickling down his cheeks as he shouted orders in a frantic frenzy. Lock on him. His voice was hoarse with nervousness and anxiety. They had to find Weiss's whereabouts as soon as possible. Yes, sir. Upon hearing the order, the intelligence officers frantically began to work. Their fingers tapped away at the keyboard, the clatter of the keys resonating distinctly in the silence of the command room, where only the hum of various instruments remained. Their eyes were fixed on the screens, where countless data flashed rapidly. But strangely, no matter how hard they tried, no matter how many high-tech tools they employed, they could not find any trace of Weiss. He simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. This left everyone confused and anxious, and the already tense atmosphere grew even more tense. Just as everyone was frantic, alarms suddenly blared within the Temporal Variance Management Bureau, their piercing sound instantly shattering the tense silence. Alert, 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 the rapid, repetitive chorus grew louder and louder, each one more alarming. An equally urgent, solemn voice boomed over the PA system. Intrusion. Everyone on high alert. Instantly, a blinding red light illuminated the entire bureau, illuminating the space with a crimson glow, as if stained with blood. The reflections on everyone's faces made them appear to be dripping with blood. Damn it! He's tracking us from behind. Mr. Paradox's face darkened, a strong sense of foreboding welling up within him. A flicker of fear flashed across his eyes, and he hurried to the control panel, rapidly pressing several buttons. As he pressed, a picture appeared on the large screen. The scene unfolded, causing everyone to gasp. Prior to the operation, a Deadpool had stolen a shuttle. Using this stolen shuttle, Wes had traced their path back to the Temporal Variance Administration. Stop him, Mr. Paradox shouted at the top of his lungs. All the technicians snapped to their senses, using all their might to remotely close the space-time portal and prevent Wes's invasion. Beads of sweat covered their foreheads, their eyes filled with anxiety and despair, but it was too late. Chapter 403 The Law of Time. A blindingly bright flash of light finally opened the space-time portal, and Weiss swaggered through it with unbridled confidence, invading the Temporal Variance Administration. He hovered in the air, emanating a mysterious and powerful aura. His eyes were filled with curiosity and scrutiny, like an explorer stumbling upon a hidden treasure trove, as he surveyed his surroundings with fascination. Was this the place that governed the multiverse's timelines? A group of heavily armed men quickly emerged from the various passageways, running with disciplined precision. They quickly surrounded Weiss. They wore custom uniforms emblazoned with intricate patterns, sported bizarrely shaped weapons on their waists, and wore helmets with goggles. They appeared well-trained. But Weiss ignored them. He narrowed his eyes slightly, channeling a trace of his mental power to sense them. He instantly sensed no unusual energy fluctuations emanating from them. They were, to put it bluntly, just ordinary people. This puzzled Weiss, who wondered, are these ordinary people managing countless timelines? The Temporal Variance Management Bureau, a mysterious place that controls the timelines of the entire multiverse, should be filled with hidden talents and powerful experts. Yet, now that he had penetrated the interior, no expert had been discovered. Could it be that they were hiding, waiting for him to show a flaw before striking? Or was there something else going on? To find out, Weiss decided to test the waters. He raised his hand, and a powerful surge of magical energy instantly erupted from his palm, sweeping out in all directions like a surging torrent. Under the influence of this magical force, a massive tornado materialized out of thin air. Like a giant black dragon emerging from the abyss, it roared and bared its fangs. Its immense size mercilessly swept up tables, chairs, equipment, documents, and everything else in its path, swirling them through the air before being violently flung in all directions. Those surrounding Weiss were no exception, caught on the tornado's screams, their bodies whirled uncontrollably in the wind. Some were even thrown against the walls, groaning in agony. The tornado raged through the administration, tearing through the walls and leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Deep scratches were scratched into the walls, chandelier ripped from the ceiling, shattering into a blanket of broken glass on the floor, and delicate equipment was shattered, sending sparks flying. But what puzzled Wes was that the tornado was so rampant within the authority, causing such devastation, yet no one made a move to stop it. Was it truly impossible to stop it, or did they simply not care about the destruction? Weiss's curiosity grew, and so did his vigilance. He hovered quietly in the air, his eyes warily scanning his surroundings, waiting for what might unfold next. Expel him, Mr. Paradox's face livid, veins bulging on his forehead as he shouted the command at the top of his lungs. With a command, several staff members hurriedly wheeled out a mysterious instrument resembling a giant cannon. It glowed with a strange blue light, its surface covered in intricate, delicate patterns. It was securely placed on a specially constructed pedestal. Then, the muzzle slowly raised, aiming precisely at Weiss, hovering in the air. Then, a whoosh. A strangely shimmering energy bullet, accompanied by a whistling sound, shot out from the muzzle with astonishing speed, instantly covering the vast distance and heading straight for Wes. The power of the energy bullet was beyond imagination, penetrating Wes's magic shield. Seeing this, Wes cast the flying spell. In an instant, a chair nearby, as if drawn by some powerful force, flew towards Wes with a whoosh, just blocking him. But the moment the chair and the energy bullet made contact, a strange scene occurred. The chair seemed to have never appeared in this world, instantly disappearing completely, as if erased from the timeline by an invisible force. Wes warned himself, "Don't let this thing hit you." Meanwhile, alarms continued to echo piercingly throughout the Temporal Variance Administration. Troops quickly assembled, rolling out one after another of the same terrifyingly shaped cannons. They lined up neatly on either side of the wide corridor, their dark muzzles flashing a dangerous, cold light as they aimed at Weiss. Simultaneously, countless soldiers, armed with live ammunition, surged in from all directions. They wore black uniforms, helmets with goggles, and clutched strangely shaped firearms, all pointed at Weiss. The scene was spectacular, yet fraught with deadly danger. In an instant, energy grenades rained down on Weiss like a dense raindrop. These energy grenades were extraordinary, imbued with the mysterious and obscure laws of time. To be hit by one would be catastrophic, potentially engulfing one in the endless turbulence of time, forever lost, or having parts of one's body instantly obliterated, much like the unfortunate chair. Golem. In this critical moment, Weiss muttered a low cry, his hands dancing rapidly as he unleashed his unique manipulation magic. As if inspired by something, the surrounding iron elements quickly gathered and condensed, forming in the blink of an eye a colossal female figure, over 10 meters tall. Her face was stern, her posture slender, and her hands held Weiss firmly in her palms, as if guarding a rare treasure. The golem immediately shielded Weiss from the rain of energy bullets. The energy bullet struck the golem, leaving holes where they struck. Weiss knew that despite its strength, the golem wouldn't be able to withstand such a dense and powerful attack for long. Seeking a way out, Weiss tentatively launched an attack using elemental magic, manipulating fire, water, earth, and rock, sweeping towards the cannons and soldiers. However, to his dismay, the elemental magic was ruthlessly wiped out by the laws of time inherent in the energy bullets the moment they came into contact. It vanished into thin air, leaving only a void. Weiss's brow furrowed. Under this powerful attack, he had to come up with a countermeasure as soon as possible. Chapter 404 Time Controller. A quote from Lu Xun, "If you can't solve the problem, eliminate the person who created it," is a profound truth that strikes the heart of our current predicament. Spiritual storm. Weiss uttered these words softly, yet beneath his seemingly calm exterior lay a devastating force. Instantly, invisible and intangible spiritual energy swept in all directions at a speed imperceptible to the naked eye. It pierced through all material defenses, impacting the depths of the brain and striking the most intimate corners of the soul. In an instant, the agents of the Temporal Variance Administration fell like wheat being harvested by an invisible, razor-sharp scythe, falling helplessly in droves. Their eyes lost focus, becoming vacant and lifeless, like shells drained of their souls. Their bodies collapsed to the ground, their bodies limp. Around them, a chaotic, shrill, piercing alarms blared from various instruments and equipment, gleaming with eerie light. The attack abruptly ceased, but Weiss, like a flash of black lightning, remained unstoppable and unflinching. Taking advantage of this brief, precious moment of chaos, he burst into the command room. Inside, the lights flickered. The walls were covered in a dazzling array of control devices, and on the massive screens, countless data flashed and changed rapidly, making it difficult to keep up. Mr. Paradox, the central figure in the Temporal Variance Administration, stood there in a state of terror, beads of sweat dripping down his forehead. His hands trembled as he tried to issue a final order, a vain attempt to reverse the situation that had spiraled out of control. Seeing this, Weiss, without hesitation, used a single hand like a pair of pliers to lift Mr. Paradox high up like a chicken. His eyes, like two cold ponds, shone with icy coldness and eager desire. He stared at Mr. Paradox and said coldly, "Let me see what secrets are in your head." Then, Weiss began to read Mr. Paradox's memories. During this process, Mr. Paradox felt as if his head were being pierced by thousands of steel needles from all sides simultaneously. The excruciating pain nearly knocked him unconscious. His facial muscles twitched violently, his eyes rolled back, and his entire face contorted beyond recognition. A faint moan escaped his lips, as if a chopstick were stirring inside his brain. Finally, amidst the tangled web of memories, Weiss discovered a treasure, the space-time controller. His eyes, as if illuminated by brilliant stars, instantly shone with dazzling excitement, a fervent desire burning deep within them. "Where is it?" Weiss increased his force, continuously extracting Mr. Paradox's memories. "Then goodbye, Mr. Paradox." Having obtained the information he sought, Weiss mercilessly tossed Mr. Paradox out of the command room like a rag. Mr. Paradox's body arced through the air like a falling meteor. As he fell, something strange happened. His body suddenly expanded, his skin stretched tight like a balloon about to burst, its color growing increasingly red. Bang! The moment his body touched the ground, a deafening roar resounded, as if the heavens were collapsing and the earth were cracking. Mr. Paradox instantly transformed into a massive fireball, blazing flames soaring into the sky like a red lotus blossoming in hell, engulfing everything around him. Heat surged, flames shot skyward, and the temporal variance administration was plunged into complete chaos. A state reminiscent of the end of the world. Weiss, however, seized upon this chaos and, like a master leisurely strolling through a sea of hellfire, found the space-time controller with unerring ease. As his hand touched the cold, mysterious controller, his movements became exceedingly gentle, as if he were handling a rare treasure, his eyes filled with fascination and awe. The time controller held power capable of upending the entire multiverse. With it, one could even destroy entire timelines, annihilating countless worlds. With a press of a button, the fate of billions could be decided. However, Weiss had no interest in such mad pursuits as world destruction. He harbored a loftier, more pure pursuit, to uncover the mysteries of time and master the supreme law of time. This time controller must contain the law of time that Weiss longed for, the key to unlocking the secrets of time. After carefully returning the time controller to the Mage Tower, Weiss's face lit up with a satisfied smile, and he whispered to himself, "A great harvest." This unexpected haul filled him with joy. After leaving a gift for the Time Variance Administration, Weiss gracefully departed. At that moment, the belated agents had just rushed in, wielding a variety of advanced weapons. They looked around bewilderedly, shouting, "Where are the people?" They hadn't noticed that, with their breath, they had inhaled tiny particles of green dust. Like ghosts, these particles flowed through their bloodstreams, rapidly dispersing throughout their bodies. Gradually, their pupils began to glow green, and they grew restless. Someone lost control of their temper and shouted, "Damn it!" Seeing this, nearby agents rushed forward to dissuade them. "Calm down," but the man, like a powder keg, lost control and screamed hysterically, "How can you expect me to calm down?" Another agent, eyes red, chimed in, "That's right. So many comrades have died. We can't just let this go." Someone else brandished their weapon and shouted viciously, "Find that wizard. I'm going to chop him into 8 pieces." A more reasonable agent tried to dissuade the impulsive action, saying, "This is against the rules," but his words only added fuel to the fire, prompting everyone to retort, "Fuck the rules." Instantly, these normally well-trained agents descended into heated argument, their words running back and forth, each refusing to yield, the heat rising. Finally, amid the chaotic shoving and bickering, someone accidentally swung a stun gun at a nearby agent. The agent touched by the electric baton was instantly wiped out, as if he had never existed in this world, leaving only a blank space. This scene stunned everyone, but before they could react, the riot broke out like a raging flood, and the entire Time Variance Administration was reduced to a living hell. Everywhere was filled with shouts, screams, and the clash of weapons. Chaos and despair enveloped every corner. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Waiting for the Rabbit. Weiss paid no attention to the subsequent changes in the Temporal Variance Administration following his departure. The chaos and strife were nothing compared to his current goal. He had returned to the Mage Tower's core control center, a place of tranquility and mystery, its walls shimmering with strange runes. His gaze was fixed intently on the newly acquired time controller, a look of exploration and longing. Weiss gently touched the time controller with his wand. However, just as the tip of his wand was about to touch it, a powerful counterforce pushed it back, numbing his arm slightly. "Alato," Weiss muttered, attempting to crack the time controller's casing and peer inside. He fully expected to see its core structure and uncover the secrets of the laws of time. But the moment the spell took effect, the time controller suddenly came to life and began to vibrate. The light around it flickered more intensely, desperately resisting Weiss's magical invasion. Weiss's eyes glared at the sight, and without hesitation, he increased his magical output. From his palms, a surge of ever-increasing magical power poured forth, pouring relentlessly toward the time controller. This action, however, seemed to enrage the time controller, causing it to tremble even more violently, emitting a humming sound, as if issuing a final warning. Bang! Suddenly, a powerful force rippled through the time controller, catching Weiss off guard. He stumbled, taking several steps back before finally stabilizing himself. A flicker of resentment crossed his face, his brow furrowed, his eyes filled with stubborn determination. Weiss wasn't one to give up easily. Unwilling to be stumped by the controller, he continued to try several more times, but each time ended in failure. The time controller stubbornly resisted his attempts to dismantle it. In desperation, Weiss calmed down and carefully reviewed the memories he had retrieved from Mr. Paradox. However, to his disappointment, Mr. Paradox's memories contained no instructions for dismantling the time controller, leaving Weiss feeling a bit daunted. "Patience is key," Weiss said, taking a deep breath and silently encouraging himself. He wasn't discouraged. After all, he'd encountered countless daunting challenges throughout his magical training, and this little setback wasn't enough to deter him. Furthermore, he had plenty of time, a unique advantage for a powerful wizard. Over the next few days, Weiss devoted himself to dismantling the time controller. He tried every magical technique, from ancient, obscure forbidden spells to elemental magic. He even employed alchemy, attempting to break the time controller's defenses using metals of varying properties and mysterious potions. But all his efforts proved futile. "I was planning on using my own strength, but you forced me to cheat," Weiss muttered in frustration. Then, with a wave of his hand, a stone platform slowly rose from the ground in the control center. Atop it, a reality gem, emitting a red glow, floated in the air. Its light was dreamlike, as if it could warp reality and alter all established rules. Weiss carefully manipulated the reality gem, bringing it to touch the time controller. At first, as before, the time controller trembled violently, attempting to resist the overwhelming force. Weiss dared not let his guard down. He concentrated intently on sensing the interplay of power between the two, carefully channeling his magical energy, trying to find a balance that would allow the reality stone to penetrate the time controller's defenses. Finally, thanks to his persistent efforts, a gentle click sound was heard. The clatter of gears and machinery churned, a sound that was remarkably clear in the silent control center. The time controller was finally disassembled, revealing countless incredibly delicate components. Weiss's eyes searched through them quickly finding the core component. "Should I say this as expected?" Weiss smiled wryly and shook his head the moment he saw the core component. It turned out that the core of the time controller was the Time Stone, one of the Infinity Stones. However, this wasn't the one familiar to everyone in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Temporal Variance Administration had collected numerous time stones from across the multiverse and used them to create this powerful time controller. With a sudden thought, Wes threw an apple at the time stone, testing its power. The moment it approached the stone, the apple shriveled and withered, ultimately dissolving into nothingness. Seeing this, Wes understood that the tampered stone couldn't be used directly. After a moment's reflection, he decided to reassemble the time controller. Studying it within the Marvel multiverse was dangerous, Wes felt. A single mistake could cause the multiverse to become unbalanced. If handled improperly, it could be like stirring up a hornet's nest, attracting the nearly invincible Celestials. The Celestials wouldn't sit idly by when the order of the multiverse was disturbed. If they targeted him, the situation would be dire. Therefore, to be on the safe side, it was better to study the Time Stone in another world. So, Wes carefully used the Reality Stone's uncanny power to warp and manipulate reality to temporarily seal the Time Stone. Under his meticulous manipulation, the Reality Stone emanated a soft yet resilient light, like a sturdy cage, encasing the Time Stone, ensuring its immense and uncontrollable power would not spiral out of control, nor would it release any traceable aura, preventing anyone from following the clues and tracing its coordinates to this world. With this accomplished, Wes breathed a sigh of relief. He then cast a spell, opening a space-time portal and returning to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Amidst a flash of light and space, Wes's figure gradually became clearer, landing steadily on the African savanna. However, what Wes hadn't expected was to find someone quietly waiting for him there. "Steve," Wes frowned slightly, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He saw a tent pitched beside Steve, and scattered garbage around him. It was clear he had been here for some time. This was exactly where Wes had disappeared. It seemed Steve had been waiting there, and he had indeed caught his eye. Chapter 406 Debate. "We need to talk." Steve's face was serious, his gaze fixed firmly on Wes. His unwavering tone told Wes there was no way to avoid this conversation. Hearing this, Wes sighed in frustration. He knew Steve, once he'd made up his mind, would find it difficult to change it. Wes, having his own reasons, bluntly declared, "Steve, we're not on the same page." He turned and tried to leave, unwilling to tangle with Steve. But Steve wouldn't let him go so easily. His shield traced a beautiful arc through the air, then with a clang, it firmly embedded itself into the ground beneath Wes's feet, blocking his path. "All right, let's talk then." Seeing Steve's relentless determination, Wes sighed inwardly and raised his hand with a gentle wave. A strange ripple of magical energy suddenly filled the air. Two exquisite chairs appeared from thin air and landed steadily on the grass. Wes walked over to a chair first, slowly sat down, and motioned Steve to join him. The two of them sat opposite each other. Wes narrowed his eyes slightly, watching Steve quietly. He could almost guess what Steve was about to say. Sure enough, as soon as Steve sat down, he launched into a torrent of familiar truisms. He recounted his past battles against Hydra and the arduous struggles to defeat the Nazis, then spoke of his current role as a superhero, shouldering the heavy responsibility of protecting the world and maintaining peace. His words were earnest, his eyes filled with sincerity and determination, as if he was trying to impress Wes with his experiences and convictions. However, Wes's impatience grew. He couldn't bear these clichés any longer. He raised his hand and bluntly shut Steve down, saying bluntly, "After all this talk, what you're trying to say is simply that with great power comes great responsibility, right?" Steve's eyes lit up at this, as if he'd found a kindred spirit. He hadn't expected Wes to summarize his core points so succinctly, and he couldn't help but admire Wes's insight. "Why?" Steve's approval didn't stop him from questioning. Instead, his tone became sharper, his gaze fixed on Steve as he continued. "Since great power brings great responsibility, why don't I see capitalists proactively raising workers' wages? Why don't I see the government truly addressing poverty? Why don't I see the powerful truly working for world peace, instead of just vying for power and waging war?" Wes's barrage of questions cut like a sharp knife, piercing the heart of the matter, leaving Steve speechless for a moment. With great power comes great responsibility? It should be, with great power comes great responsibility. Wes leaned forward slightly, looking directly into Steve's eyes, his gaze cold and profound. "You should be saying these words to the capitalists and politicians. They provoked this war, they're the ones manipulating everything behind the scenes, plunging the world into chaos and causing countless suffering. And you're here telling me, with great power comes great responsibility. Have you ever thought about who you're fighting for, and who truly benefits from all this?" Steve's heart surged as he listened to Wes's words. He opened his mouth to retort, but found himself unable to find a suitable reason. The convictions he had always held firmly began to waver under Wes's questioning. For the first time, he began to seriously consider what he had been fighting for all these years. He had originally hoped to convince Wes to join his side, to fight for so-called justice and peace, but now he was in deep confusion. Steve smiled wryly and shook his head. He knew he'd completely lost this conversation. There was no point in trying to hold Wes back any longer, so he let Wes stand up and walk away. Watching Wes's retreating figure, Steve sat alone in his chair, motionless for a long time, his mind filled with confusion and struggle. He pondered the future, lost in deep thought. After freeing himself from Steve, Wes opened the dimensional portal. His original plan had been for Washington. Curious about the current situation in Washington, He wanted to see for himself what it had become, shaped by the complexities of the situation. The next moment, Wes felt a flash of light and shadow before his eyes. The surroundings suddenly shifted, and a biting cold wind howled in his face. He was now in the Himalayas. The land was covered in ice and snow, and the wind was raging. The wind whipped snowflakes into a whirlwind, piercing his face like a knife, making it almost impossible to open his eyes. Surrounding him were rolling snow-capped mountains, gleaming coldly in the sunlight. A world clad in silver, permeated by an endless loneliness and coldness. "I hope you don't mind my sudden interruption," a calm yet powerful voice echoed. Weiss looked in the direction of the voice and saw the Ancient One slowly emerge. She was clad in her signature yellow robes, her figure erect and her face calm. "Okay, what's going on?" Weiss sighed helplessly. Ever since Mephisto targeted her last time, he had resolved to avoid any involvement with the Ancient One. After all, the Ancient One was entangled in too many complex causes and conditions. Every contact with them seemed to bring him unexpected trouble. He didn't want to be drawn into those tangled messes again. "I'm dying." The Ancient One's tone remained calm, as if she were narrating a trivial matter. Weiss wasn't overly surprised. "It seems you've found a worthy successor," Weiss said calmly, glancing at the Ancient One. He knew the Ancient One had made plans long ago. With her foresight, she would surely ensure that the crucial position of Sorcerer Supreme, safeguarding the world's balance, remained vacant. "Stephen will be the most accomplished Sorcerer Supreme among us." The Ancient One nodded slightly, his eyes gleaming with relief and anticipation as he mentioned Stephen, clearly confident in his successor. Weiss simply shrugged, his expression nonchalant, indicating that the situation had nothing to do with him. He was completely focused on his own affairs and had no desire to get involved in matters like the succession of the Sorcerer Supreme. "Your presence disrupts the timeline." The Ancient One's gaze sharpened. "I need your help." She took a step forward, her gaze etched with earnestness. "I can't help you," Weiss said without hesitation, decisively rejecting her request. Chapter 407. "Perhaps this will change your mind." The Ancient One, her expression calm, slowly opened her right hand. A green crystal, emitting a mysterious glow, floated from her palm, as if guided by an invisible hand, and drifted slowly towards Weiss. "This is the crystallization of my profound understanding of the laws of time." The Ancient One's voice was low and gentle. Weiss's previously indifferent eyes suddenly lit up. As the Supreme Sorcerer, the Ancient One had studied this crystal for years. The knowledge contained in this crystal was undoubtedly a gift beyond imagination, enough to attract countless powerful people. However, Weiss was no novice after all. After a moment of surprise, suspicion quickly crept onto his face. He stared at the Ancient One, his eyes like two sharp daggers, as if he wanted to penetrate the Ancient One's thoughts, trying to find even the slightest flaw in her expression and eyes. Behind easily gained benefits often lie hidden traps. Perhaps this seemingly tempting gift is actually a deadly bomb wrapped in a sweet coating. "Don't worry, what I ask is very simple. I simply ask you to lend a hand in Strange's time of need." The Ancient One, seemingly seeing through Weiss's thoughts, raised her eyes slightly and met Weiss's gaze with a clear, sincere expression, without a trace of evasion. "Nothing else," she added, emphasizing her sincerity. "Really?" Weiss narrowed her eyes slightly, took a step forward, and stared intently into the Ancient One's gaze, trying to catch any flicker of apprehension. But the Ancient One remained composed, his face calm, his eyes devoid of any hint of deception. He stood quietly, allowing Weiss to scrutinize him. After a long moment of contemplation, Wes weighed the pros and cons in his mind, finally nodding slowly and agreeing. "I'll only strike once." The Ancient One's lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile that seemed imbued with endless depth. He whispered, "That's enough. Well, then, goodbye." Wes's figure flashed, transforming into a streak of light and vanishing from the spot, leaving only a faint afterimage. The Marvel world is still too complex. I've gotten a little carried away lately. As he sped through the void, this thought crossed Wes' mind. Perhaps, without him realizing it, multiverse-level leaders had quietly cast their gaze upon him. This sudden thought startled Wes, like a bucket of cold water poured over his head, instantly sobering him from his previous complacency. What's going on? Why am I so uneasy? Weiss thought to himself that with his current strength, his mind had long since been cultivated to be as firm as a rock. Ordinary disturbances couldn't shake his heart, let alone allow him to indulge in such unbridled thoughts. But at this moment, An inexplicable sense of panic followed him like a shadow, lingering. This was a warning. A sudden flash of light flashed through Weiss's mind. This was his instinct sending him the strongest warning. In this life-or-death moment, without a moment's hesitation, he activated the control panel. The next moment, Weiss was in the pirate world. That interesting little guy's gone," a mysterious, ethereal voice echoed quietly in the void, as if emanating from the endless abyss, as if it had traveled through time and space. It was Death who spoke, the source, creator, and controller of all life and souls in the multiverse. He represented the concrete manifestation of the end of all life in the multiverse and was one of the 5 renowned creator gods of the Marvel Universe. He silently gazed at the spot where Weiss had just left. His gaze seemed to penetrate layers of space and dimension, so powerful that even the Ancient One remained unaware of his presence. Meanwhile, Weiss in the pirate world clutched his pounding heart, beads of sweat streaming down his forehead. His face paled slightly as he muttered, "That was a close call." Although he had no idea who was watching him from behind, Weiss trusted his intuition, an innate instinct that never failed at crucial moments. This was the first time he had felt the aura of death so vividly, its icy, bone-chilling chill frozen his soul. Weiss took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, attempting to calm his pounding, turbulent heart. "I can't go back to Marvel for now. Who knows if that big boss is still watching me," Weiss muttered to himself with a hint of fear and caution. The oppressive feeling emanating from that mysterious and powerful being lingered in his mind. To hastily return to the Marvel world without complete assurance would undoubtedly be a trap, and he didn't want to risk his life. Therefore, he decided to remain in the pirate world. He could use this opportunity to thoroughly comprehend the crystal of time laws given by the Ancient One. This was a rare opportunity. If he could fully grasp its mysteries, his strength would soar to new heights, giving him greater confidence in facing future unknown dangers. The pirate world was now divided into 4 factions, a situation far more chaotic than most could imagine. Fierce battles erupted almost daily among these 4 factions, vying for supremacy and resources, filling the seas with lingering smoke. Unlike the great pirate era of the past, wars now escalated from small-scale skirmishes between individual pirate groups to large-scale conflicts involving nations, the brutality of which was staggering. In this chaotic war, countless innocent people suffered terribly, their homes ruthlessly destroyed. Forced to flee their homes, they fled in search of a safe haven. Amidst this chaos, Dressrosa and Wano became the last havens of peace. Consequently, a massive influx of refugees arrived, and in a short period of time, the populations of both regions more than doubled. This sudden surge in population posed a significant challenge to Law and Violet, who oversaw local affairs. They were overwhelmed by the task of accommodating these refugees, coordinating resources, maintaining local order, and ensuring the basic needs of the people were met. Fortunately, a crucial factor kept the situation from spiraling out of control: Weiss's intimidating presence. His immense power instilled fear in all factions. Knowing that he presided over Dressrosa and Wano, no one dared to cause trouble, providing the strongest guarantee of stability in both regions. Chapter 408 New World. Is this the land of rain? Weiss tilted his head slightly, gazing at the leaden sky. Dense, dark clouds blanketed the sky like a thick quilt, impervious to wind. Large, pea-sized raindrops clattered down with a clattering patter, showing no sign of abating. As far as he could remember, the land of rain was the only place in the entire ninja world shrouded in such perpetually inclement weather. This land, nestled between the land of fire, the land of earth, and the land of wind, unfortunately became a battlefield and buffer zone for the great powers' struggles. Whenever the Ninja World War erupted, the flames of war spread without warning, bringing untold suffering to the people. The already barren land, ravaged by years of war and the relentless torrential rain, became even more impoverished, plunging the people into an abyss of endless misery. It was in this desperate situation that the organization known as Akatsuki emerged. Initially, they held lofty ideals, determined to end war, hoping that nations would put aside their differences and coexist peacefully, bringing hope to this scarred continent. However, times have changed, and under Nagato's leadership, the Akatsuki has strayed from its original aspirations. Weiss, reflecting on the plot of Naruto in his mind, walked forward at a leisurely pace. Not long into his journey, he fortunately came upon a small village. He paused briefly to ask the villagers for directions to the Hidden Rain village, then set off again. Soon, Weiss stood on the air, gazing down at the Hidden Rain village below. The sight brought a slight frown to his eyes, and he muttered to himself, "What a strange village." The Hidden Rain Village's architecture was distinct, most towering into the sky, and the majority constructed of steel. Given his understanding of the world's productivity, he knew that such a modern cityscape could not have emerged in such a backward environment without special assistance. Ultimately, all this was due to the mysterious and powerful power of chakra. As Weiss entered the Hidden Rain Village, Nagato keenly noticed her. The rain here actually contained Nagato's chakra, a unique ninjutsu he used to monitor the entire village. Weiss had done this deliberately. "Intruder," from the shadows, a Hidden Rain Village ninja whispered to his companions. "Not likely." The companion shook his head slightly, also using telepathic transmission. "He doesn't look like someone who would cause trouble." "Tourists?" another ninja asked in confusion. "Idiot, where are we getting tourists?" the nearby ninja couldn't help but whisper. Ever since Nagato-sama defeated Hanzo, the Hidden Rain Village has maintained a policy of secrecy and isolation. How could there be tourists? After a brief exchange, the hidden ninjas made a swift decision: don't act rashly. Report everything to the Angel-sama. They thought they were acting in secret, but they didn't realize that their every move exposed them like naked flesh under Weiss's gaze. The information spread incredibly quickly, reaching Conan in no time. A considerate ninja even included a photo of Weiss so that Conan could be up to date. "I've never heard of him," Tendo Paine's hollow, commanding voice echoed from within the room. He lowered his head slightly, examining the information in his hand, his eyes expressionless. "An unknown ninja, I don't have any relevant information. But the fact that he was able to invade the village suggests he's quite powerful." Conan's brows furrowed, a hint of caution in her eyes. At this crucial moment, any slight disturbance could derail the organization's carefully crafted plan. Could it be a spy from another village at this crucial moment? "Just an ordinary person," another Paine replied nonchalantly. "Leave this person to me." Conan pondered for a moment and decided to personally investigate this uninvited guest. Weiss was already strolling through the streets of the Hidden Rain Village, and the atmosphere around him seemed particularly eerie. The people lining the streets, from the hurried passers-by to the usually hospitable vendors, all seemed to have reached some kind of tacit agreement, keeping their distance from him, as if he were invisible, a being that didn't even exist. The vendors' faces, once beaming with smiles, immediately turned expressionless the moment they saw Weiss, their eyes deliberately averted, pretending not to notice him. The rest of the Hidden Rain Village ignored Weiss's presence, minding their own business. Only when they passed him, they would unconsciously quicken their pace, as if lingering for even a second would cause trouble. Weiss, however, remained unfazed, wandering aimlessly through the somewhat deserted streets at his leisurely pace, like a curious passerby admiring the unique scenery of this unique village. "I'm here." Weiss noticed something, his lips curled up slightly, a faint arc forming, and he slowly turned away. Conan, clad in the iconic Akatsuki uniform of black with red clouds, was graceful yet exuded a chilling aura. She approached Weiss, her eyes filled with vigilance and scrutiny. "I remember your name is Conan." Weiss spoke first, her tone casual, as if she were just chatting casually. "Who are you?" Conan's heart tightened, and she instantly felt Weiss's danger level was heightened. Everyone in the organization addressed each other by code names, and her real name was rarely known. The fact that this unknown individual could call her by name was undeniable, and she was apprehensive. "You don't look like you'll say it yourself." Before Conan finished her words, her hands quickly formed hand seals, and countless pieces of paper emerged from behind her, instantly surrounding Weiss in an impenetrable circle. "Paper escape, paper prison jutsu," Conan called out softly. The paper seemed to come alive, clinging to each other, tightening ever tighter, attempting to securely bind Weiss's hands. However, Xiaonan had no intention of killing Weiss at this moment. She simply wanted to knock him unconscious so she could later extract information from him about how he learned her name. In the blink of an eye, Weiss was completely encased in the layers of paper, his presence now invisible to the outside world. So easy, Xiaonan wondered, observing Weiss, so tightly wrapped in the paper. Chapter 409 Pain. Normally, even a stronger ninja would have struggled against her attack, but the man before her remained motionless, giving her a vague feeling that something was amiss. Just as Conan was wondering, the paper tightly wrapped around Weiss suddenly began to burst into flames. The fire spread rapidly, incinerating the entire paper in the blink of an eye, reducing it to a pile of ash that drifted into the air. Weiss, however, stood unharmed, his clothes untouched. This seems to be no ordinary ninja, Conan observed, her heart sinking. She knew that someone who could so easily withstand her attack was no ordinary ninja. She immediately put aside her previous contempt and took things seriously. Immediately, Conan formed hand seals again, unleashing an even more powerful paper escape technique. Suddenly, a torrent of paper, like a surging wave, swept towards Weiss from all directions, each sheet transformed into a razor-sharp blade. However, Weiss remained calm. With a simple raise of his hand, invisible forces surged from his palm, deflecting and shattering the incoming papers. Seeing this, Conan gritted her teeth and continued to pump more chakra, her attacks becoming increasingly fierce. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break through Weiss's defenses. Instead, her own chakra was dwindling at a noticeable rate from the intense consumption. A minute later, Conan's face paled further, beads of sweat dripping down her forehead. She knelt on one knee, panting heavily, her body trembling slightly from the depletion of chakra. Her previous composure and coldness were gone, her eyes filled with exhaustion and resentment. Weiss extended a finger, and a thumb-sized ball of blue light hovered on its tip. It was the entire chakra he had just extracted from Conan. Weiss stared at the ball of light, frowning slightly as she muttered to herself, "Chakra, nothing more." In the brief moment of clashing with Conan, he had already grasped the principles of chakra, relying on his powerful perception and unique understanding of energy. He knew it was simply a form of energy that could be controlled and utilized, not a profoundly complex system of power he had encountered. "Who the hell are you?" Conan forced herself to slowly rise from the ground, her eyes filled with disbelief and resentment. As a prominent member of the Akatsuki organization, she had never imagined she would be so easily defeated by a previously unknown individual. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow to her pride, not from the 5 great nations, yet possessing such terrifying power. Conan pondered to herself. Before this, she had never received any information about Weiss. It was as if this person had appeared out of thin air. But now, this mysterious figure loomed like an insurmountable mountain, overwhelming her with an unprecedented pressure. Weiss, seemingly oblivious to Conan's question, didn't respond. Instead, he raised his head slightly, his gaze piercing the surrounding space as he gazed at a hidden corner. "Aren't you coming out yet?" As his words fell, a strange wave spread through the air, and the figure of Heaven's Path, Pain, slowly emerged. "Pain, be careful. This man is no ordinary person," Conan warned. She knew Weiss's formidable strength, and now that he had appeared, she feared he might underestimate her and suffer a loss. After all, this mysterious figure had just easily deflected her full strength attack and drained all of her chakra. Heaven's Path, Pain nodded slightly, his eyes grim. He surveyed Weiss and asked again, "Who are you?" His voice was deep and commanding, carrying an undeniable sense of pressure. However, Weiss still didn't answer him. She simply held up 2 fingers calmly, her tone flat yet revealing a resoluteness that brooked no refusal. "I give you 2 choices, surrender or die." A surge of immense power surged from Heaven's Path. It was the chakra he had deliberately unleashed. Like a surging wave, it instantly spread outward, its powerful aura causing the surrounding space to faintly distort. Pain's eyes were filled with disdain as he glared coldly at Weiss and said, "Foolish." Swish, swish, with a sound of piercing air, the figures of the 6 paths of pain flashed in succession, surrounding Weiss in an instant. Their staggered positions formed an impenetrable circle, trapping Weiss in the center. "Let go of Conan. I'll give you a quick death," the 6 paths of pain spoke in unison, their voices dripping with cold murderous intent. Weiss remained unfazed. Facing the overwhelming force of the 6 paths of pain, he was like a towering mountain, unmoved by the raging wind and rain. He shook his head slightly, a hint of regret in his voice, and whispered, "I made the worst possible choice." At this moment, Shiradeo quickly discarded his coat. Shiradeo's original body began to undergo a strange transformation. With a series of mechanical clicks, his form gradually transformed into a 3-headed, 6-armed form. A certain part of his head slowly opened, a dazzling beam of light instantly focused, and then a powerful laser beam shot straight at Weiss. However, Weiss simply tilted his head calmly, and the laser beam whizzed past his cheek and shot straight behind him, instantly piercing several buildings. With a loud bang, the laser beams blasted through the walls of the buildings, first creating huge holes in their walls, and then they collapsed like building blocks without support. In this chaotic moment, Renji and Ao, taking advantage of the cover created by Shiradeo's attack, sprang towards Weiss like a ghost. If he could manage to touch Weiss, the battle could be over in an instant. Rengiandeo possessed two extremely formidable abilities, reading memories and draining chakra. In previous battles, he had caught many enemies off guard. Got it, Rengiandeo's speed suddenly increased, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of Weiss. Without hesitation, he extended his hand and placed it firmly on Weiss's chest. Then, he quickly activated his abilities, attempting to read Weiss's memories and drain his chakra. However, to his surprise, his abilities, which had always worked, failed. Your understanding of the soul is too superficial, Weiss said softly, looking at Rengiandeo with a hint of pity in his eyes. Before he could finish his words, and before Nagato could react, he felt as if his head was stabbed by a stick. The sudden severe pain and the sense of invasion made his mind temporarily confused, and his body could not help but tremble slightly. Chapter 410 Fight. Weiss, relying on that brief contact with a human path and her own powerful perception, had traced that subtle connection and precisely tracked Nagato's true form. Heavenly attraction, seeing the situation was dire, Pain unleashed this powerful move without hesitation. He aimed his right hand at Weiss, and instantly, a powerful gravitational force surged from his palm, sweeping towards her. This force should have forcibly pulled everything around him inward, but Weiss remained motionless, as if rooted to the ground. The gravitational force was like a gentle breeze to him, unable to move him at all. What's going on? Pain was shocked. This was a move he had always tried and tested, and it had never failed like this. He had always assumed that even a formidable foe would be at least tugged and shaken by the gravitational pull. However, this mysterious figure before him completely defied his conventional wisdom, leaving him completely baffled. Your understanding of power is too superficial, Weiss said calmly, looking at Pine. Then, he slowly brought his hands together, and a small vortex began to form between them. At first, it was barely noticeable, but as Weiss continued to inject power, it rapidly expanded and began to swirl wildly, generating a tremendous suction force. The suction was so strong that it instantly distorted the surrounding air, forming visible streams of air that swirled and twisted like a ferocious python. Everything around seemed to lose its resistance and be sucked in by the vortex. This is, Pine's eyes widened, filled with shock and disbelief. This move was incredibly familiar to him, it was clearly the power of the Rinnegan. Could this man possess the same power as him? But how could that be possible? He was the only one in the entire ninja world who possessed the Rinnegan. But now was clearly not the time for wild speculation. He knew that if he didn't take action, everyone would be swallowed up by the vortex. Spiritual summoning technique. The animal path quickly formed hand seals. Thick smoke billowed, and a massive rhinoceros appeared. Its muscles bulged, exuding a powerful aura. As it appeared, it roared in Weiss's direction, attempting to break free from the vortex's pull with its own immense strength. However, reality was harsh. Faced with the terrifying pull of the vortex, the seemingly formidable rhinoceros was like a light leaf, instantly pulled away. Before it could even struggle, it was completely sucked into the vortex, vanishing without a trace. Regardless of what creatures the animal path subsequently summoned, whether majestic summoned beasts or massive behemoths, they were all easily swallowed by the tiny vortex, offering no resistance at all. The human insurance paths were not spared either. Despite their desperate attempts to steady themselves, the vortex's suction, like an invisible hand, tugged them tightly. Ultimately, they were mercilessly drawn in, vanishing in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, buildings within a kilometer of the surrounding area were not spared either. First, they were tottering under the pull of the suction, then, with a crackling sound, they shattered and collapsed, their bricks, wood, and other building materials sucked into the vortex. The people on the streets were terrified. They cried and screamed, but were still swept away by the irresistible force and disappeared into the vortex. Even the rain that had been falling from the sky seemed to change direction, converging towards the vortex. Earth-shattering star, Pain gritted his teeth and unleashed this ultimate move, attempting to use the powerful gravity generated by this move to counter the gravitational pull of Weiss's vortex. But it was all in vain. His power was simply too vast to match Weiss's. The gravitational pull of the black sphere was like an ant trying to shake a tree against the vortex Weiss had created. It had no effect at all. The black sphere even began to sway slightly, threatening to be sucked in. I gave you a chance, Weiss said, still appearing at ease. He looked at Pain with a calm expression, as if this were just a casual game. Asshole, Nagato, seeing this, felt a surge of resentment and anger. He desperately unleashed all his chakra in a final struggle. The surge of chakra gushed out of him, enveloping him in a dazzling light. But even so, his power was firmly suppressed by Weiss, making no difference. After a few seconds, the terrifying scene finally ended. Within a 1,000-meter radius, there was nothing left except Weiss, who stood there silently. Weiss raised his head slightly, gazing at the tallest tower in the Hidden Rain village. A second later, his figure appeared atop the tower. He stepped inside. The interior was dimly lit, permeated by an oppressive atmosphere, reminiscent of Nagato's life, filled with suffering and turmoil. Since losing his legs, Nagato's mobility has been severely limited, and he can only rely on manipulating the 6 paths of pain to fight. Even within the Akatsuki, few have ever seen his true form. He has remained hidden within this tower, quietly plotting his every move, attempting to change the cruel ninja world in his own way. Cough cough. Nagato leaned weakly against the wall, coughing repeatedly. The immense amount of chakra drained in such a short period of time undoubtedly added to the strain on his already weakened body, adding to the strain. His hair, once vibrant red due to the Uzumaki clan's vibrant vitality, now turned a pale, lusterless color, and his face was completely devoid of color. He looked like an elderly man, utterly frail. Who are you, anyway? There's no one like you in the ninja world. Nagato raised his head with difficulty and looked at Weiss. His voice was weak, and every word seemed to draw out all his strength. He thought that even if legends like Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama appeared before him, they wouldn't leave him as powerless as he was now. This wasn't a battle at all, more like a one-sided crushing defeat, which filled him with shock and despair. Weiss remained silent, his face expressionless. He had given Nagato a chance, but Nagato hadn't cherished it, insisting on becoming his enemy. He could only accept this outcome. He slowly raised his right hand and gently placed it on Nagato's head. His tone was calm, yet it carried an undeniable determination. Rest in peace. As soon as he finished speaking, Nagato felt a strange force instantly invade his mind. Then, his consciousness quickly blurred, his vision went black, and he instantly lost consciousness, collapsing limply to the ground. Chapter 411 Gathering. What on earth just happened? Uchiha Obito frowned, his tone filled with confusion and surprise. Obito had never imagined that, in just a few days since he'd left with Zetsu, the Hidden Rain village would have become so devastated. Everywhere was a scene of devastation. The familiar streets and buildings had vanished, leaving only a vast, silent expanse, as if everything that had once been here had been completely wiped out by an invisible hand. Nagato and Konan stood before him, looking no different from their usual selves. Neither their demeanor nor their actions betrayed any noticeable change. But in reality, they had been transformed into puppets by Weiss. Through powerful and mysterious means, Weiss had completely preserved their memories and abilities from their previous lives. The puppets were immaculate, their appearance imperfect, with not a single flaw visible. Don't worry about that. How are things going over there? Nagato, seemingly unfazed by the sudden change in the Hidden Rain village, calmly asked Obito, his tone devoid of any emotion. The 3 Magatama in Obito's eyes spun rapidly, transforming into a kaleidoscope in the blink of an eye. He carefully sensed them. There's no sign of Jinjutsu, the chakra flow is normal. Even so, he sensed something amiss, something unsettling, though he couldn't quite place what it was. Are you planning a war with me? The 6 paths of pain had silently surrounded Obito, ready to launch a fierce attack and kill him if he moved even slightly. No, I don't have such thoughts. Obito's heart tightened, knowing that the plan had reached a critical juncture and couldn't afford to let this unexpected incident derail him. He suppressed his doubts and resentment and forbeared for the moment. He turned and left the tower, heading for the most severely damaged battlefield. He reached the center of the battlefield, crouched down, and carefully examined his surroundings, trying to determine the culprit from the few remaining traces. Who is it? Obito's brow furrowed, his mind musing. He gazed at the desolate scene before him, his heart filled with confusion. It looked very much like the result of the Chibaku Tensei, or Chibaku Tensei, explosion. Everything around him had been completely devoured, leaving no visible trace. Only the vast expanse of destruction and the traces of gravity lingering on the ground reminded him of the powerful ninjutsu of the Chibaku Tensei. Zetsu, Obito shouted, standing up. A strange-looking hermaphrodite slowly emerged from the ground. It was Zetsu, his body distinctly black and white, a rather bizarre sight. I don't know anything, all the remaining clones have vanished. How terrifying, White Zetsu spoke first, his tone tinged with a playful chuckle, his face plastered with a quippy smile, as if this were all just a farce, unworthy of his concern. Seeing this, Obito sighed inwardly. He hadn't had high hopes for White Zetsu in this state to begin with, and immediately turned his gaze to Black Zetsu. Black Zetsu felt Obito's gaze and shook his head slightly, indicating he hadn't noticed anything either. Something must be hidden from us. We must find out what's going on, Obito said firmly, gritting his teeth. Black Zetsu nodded in agreement. For them, the Rinnegan was the key to their entire plan. Now that something had happened in the Hidden Rain village, and Nagato was so closely tied to the Rinnegan, they couldn't let this matter go on in vain. They had to get to the bottom of it. After dark, the night fell like a vast black curtain, enveloping the entire Hidden Rain village. Silence reigned, pierced only by the occasional chirping of insects, audible in the stillness. Taking advantage of the cover of darkness and relying on the special abilities of his body, Black Zetsu cautiously inched closer to the tower. It was the most accomplished infiltrator. For millennia, with its cunning and manipulative tactics, it had provoked hundreds of wars and manipulated countless renowned ninja heroes. It was a master of these clandestine operations. What are you doing? Just as Black Zetsu was about to approach the tower, a cold, hollow voice suddenly echoed overhead, a verdict from the 9 netherworlds, causing his body to freeze. Looking up, he saw Tendo Pain floating quietly in midair, gazing down at him from above. Black Zetsu was horrified. How is this possible? It had never imagined it could be so easily discovered. It's the power of the Rinnegan. After much deliberation, he could only attribute the cause to the Rinnegan's powerful and mysterious abilities. After all, he couldn't claim to fully understand its mystical powers. I'm here to report on my work. Black Zetsu's brain raced, and he quickly came up with a rather clumsy lie, trying to get away with it. He knew full well that this excuse was completely untenable, but there was no other way. It was just a way to buy time. He was even mentally planning how to shift the blame for any trouble that might arise on Obito. I just happen to need you, Pine said calmly, as if he hadn't seen through his lie. Call everyone? Yes, Black Zetsu was secretly delighted and quickly agreed. As long as they could get out of here first, he would have a chance to find another solution. Perform your mission well, Pine said, and with a flash of his head, he disappeared into the night, leaving Black Zetsu standing alone. He stared in the direction Pine had disappeared, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Then he turned and hurried off to carry out the so-called call everyone order. In the dim cave, tiny flickers of light glimmered on the surrounding rock walls, like eyes peering from the darkness, lending the space a mysterious and eerie atmosphere. Deep within the cave, a massive statue stood majestically. It was the Outer Path Demon statue, the legendary body of the Ten Tails. Its massive form filled nearly half the cave, emanating an ancient and sinister aura, as if imbued with an endless power of darkness. The mere sight of it sent a chill down one's spine. Tendo Pain unleashed his illusionary body technique, and in a flash of light, he appeared in the open space before the Outer Path Demon statue. Soon, the other members gradually emerged, each one adding to the oppressive atmosphere within the cave. Every member of the Akatsuki organization was an S-rank renegade ninja. Their crimes within the ninja world were countless, and each one a ruthless criminal. After everyone was present, Tendo Pain slowly opened his eyes. His already majestic gaze now became more substantial as he scanned every member present one by one. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 Action. The already oppressive atmosphere in the dark, damp cave was now even more tense due to Hidden's complaints. Why summon us all of a sudden? Hidden's impatience filled his voice. You're interrupting my prayers, he fumed, as if deprived of something vital. As he spoke, he brandished his strange scythe in discontent. Idiot, Scorpion scoffed coldly, his tone thick with disdain. Hidden's complaint struck him as childish and ridiculous. Scorpion stood aside, emanating a cold and mysterious aura. His modified puppet form looked even more eerie in the dim light, the occasional subtle mechanical creaking of its joints adding to the eerie atmosphere. What did you say? Hidden was instantly enraged. His eyes widened, veins bulging on his forehead. Like a raging bull, he roared at Scorpion, I will sacrifice you to the evil god. His voice echoed through the cave, carrying a frenzied and ferocious tone. If Scorpion said even one more word, he'd strike immediately. If you can, come on. Scorpion showed no fear at all. Instead, his deepest disdain for Hidden deepened. He believed that, aside from his troublesome immortality, Hidden possessed no remarkable abilities, no technical prowess at all. He had already transformed much of his body into a puppet, possessing not only formidable combat power but also exceptional defense against all forms of attack. With no trace of blood in his body except in his vital organs, how could he fear Hidden's so-called secret techniques? All Hidden's voice suddenly rose, the shrill sound threatening to pierce the eardrums. He gripped the sickle with increasing force, his joints turning white from the exertion. The tension between the two men grew stronger, ready to explode at any moment. The air in the entire cave seemed to freeze. Enough. At this critical moment, Tendo's commanding voice reverberated through the cave, instantly drowning out a quarrel between Hidden and Sorcerer. Everyone's eyes instantly focused on him. Tendo stood in the center of the cave, emanating an aura so powerful that no one dared to look directly at him. The first phase of the plan is complete. It's time to move on to the second phase. Tendo's voice was steady and powerful, each word laced with unquestionable determination. Haha, it's finally here. Hidden's face lit up with excitement upon hearing this. The anger on his face instantly vanished, replaced by an uncontrollable excitement. He laughed out loud. Finally, I don't have to do those boring missions anymore. His eagerness was like a wild animal about to break free from its cage and run wild. Attacking the Jinchuriki is tantamount to declaring war on the 5 great nations. Kakuzu remained calm, his brow furrowed, his gaze penetrating as he analyzed the situation and spoke slowly. Attacking the Jinchuriki would inevitably provoke a strong backlash from the 5 great nations, drawing in all forces, making the situation incredibly complex and dangerous. Are you scared? Kisame said sarcastically, a mocking smile curling his lips. His shark-like features looked even more ferocious in the dim light, his 2 sharp teeth bared, giving the impression of chilling. HMPH, Kakuzu snorted, ignoring Kisame's taunting. With the exception of Uchiha Itachi, everyone else's faces lit up with eagerness upon hearing they were about to take on the Jinchuriki. They were inherently lawless individuals, seeking excitement and doing things unimaginable. This challenging and dangerous mission only heightened their excitement, their blood boiling with a thrill. Then let's begin by capturing the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Tendo glanced around at the group and gave the order. Upon hearing the order, everyone dispersed, each preparing themselves. For a moment, the cave was filled with silence, and then darkness returned. A few days later, Sasori and Itara arrived, dragging the unconscious Gaara to the cave. Gaara's once vibrant body now lay lifeless, limp, his face as pale as paper, clearly suffering from significant injuries and falling into coma. What they didn't expect was that Tendo's true form would appear there. In the past, Tendo mostly communicated his orders through the Shudo Jutsu, rarely appearing in person. This particular visit surprised Sasori and Itara. How unusual. Sasori's voice was hoarse, a hint of confusion and surprise. He narrowed his eyes slightly, looking at Tendo, trying to discern a clue from his expression. Boss, you actually came in person. Itara's eyes widened, his expression filled with curiosity. His voice, always tinged with a strange lilt, seemed oddly humorous in the solemn atmosphere. But everyone's attention was now focused on Tendo, and no one paid attention to these details. Is the Jinchuriki so important? Itara was intrigued by Tendo's personal presence. He had never seen him take a mission so seriously before. The retrieval of the tailed beasts is crucial to our plan, and for the first time, I want to personally oversee it. Tendo's face was serious. Here you go, he said, tossing a scroll to Sasori. Scorpion took it, his eyes filled with confusion, and casually asked, what is this? He casually opened the scroll, but the moment he took a look, his expression instantly shifted from indifference to surprise. His mouth dropped open slightly, his eyes filled with disbelief. This is it, Scorpion couldn't help but exclaim. The scroll contained mechanical knowledge. It contained information on Vegapunk's development of the pacifista. Although this knowledge had been obsolete by Vegapunk, it was a priceless treasure to Scorpion, obsessed with puppetry and constantly pursuing the ultimate in puppetry. The dense text, numbers, and intricate diagrams were like the key to a new world in his eyes, and every detail held an endless allure. Seeing this, Itara also approached curiously, craning his neck to examine the scroll, muttering, what is this? The dense numbers and diagrams made him dizzy. He simply couldn't understand such complex information, and soon lost interest and retreated. Chapter 413 Remuneration. Scorpion, however, was completely absorbed in his work, his eyes fixed on the scroll's contents. Everything around him was oblivious to his thoughts, his mind relentlessly contemplating how this knowledge could be applied to his own puppetry, how he could create even more powerful puppets. After several minutes, Scorpion finally regained consciousness. He looked up at Tendo with an eager expression, asking, "Where did this come from?" As the foremost puppeteer, he knew the value of this blueprint. The materials and designs described were completely unheard of, far beyond the realm of puppetry he was familiar with. Scorpion, seeing the potential for further advancements in puppetry, felt a burning desire to learn more about the source of this information. "I want to know more," Tendo said slowly, observing Scorpion's eager expression. Complete the mission well. His words were concise and clear, yet carried a sense of imperativeness, clearly meant to motivate Scorpion and encourage him to devote himself even more wholeheartedly to the upcoming mission. After speaking, Tendo's gaze fell on Deidre's empty left hand, and a slight frown crept into his face. "How rude," Deidre frowned, feeling a touch of displeasure upon noticing Tendo's gaze. He didn't want others constantly staring at his severed arm. It felt like a flawed, defective piece, making him uncomfortable. However, before Deidre could react, Tendo swiftly stepped forward and placed his hand on his left shoulder. "Hey!" Deidre cried out in surprise. He tried to break free from Tendo's grip, but found himself unable to move. Confusion and anxiety grew, unsure of what Tendo meant. Suddenly, Deidre felt an unbearable itching at the side of his arm's fracture, as if countless ants were crawling there. The sensation was both uncomfortable and frightening. But then, something even more unexpected happened. Flesh and blood began to slowly grow from the fracture. Little by little, a brand new arm emerged. The skin gradually returned to its original color, and the fingers could move flexibly, as if they had never been injured. "Give it a try," Tendo said, releasing his grip and looking at Deidre. "Huh? Oh." Deidre was stunned for a moment, then instinctively clenched his left fist and stretched his shoulders. A look of surprise filled his face. He excitedly exclaimed, "It's amazing. It's the same as before, and my chakra has returned too." He could clearly feel the chakra flowing smoothly again after his arm had recovered, and the feeling of full power filled him with joy. "You'll get used to it," Tendo observed Deidre's expression and nodded slightly. The artistic duo exchanged glances, each thinking that their boss seemed to have changed. They had never seen him so concerned about the members' well-being before. Today's actions were truly unusual. Furthermore, he had never displayed such miraculous medical ninjutsu before. At this moment, the other Akatsuki members began to use the phantom body technique. Phantom slowly descended into the cave, and for a moment, the cave became bustling again. "Now that everyone's here, let's begin," Tendo announced loudly, noting their presence. He then began to form hand seals, and the others followed suit. The outer path demon statue, sensing the crowd's call, slowly opened its maw, emanating a powerful suction force. Gaara's body floated uncontrollably in the air, its chakra continuously drawn out, as if pulled by invisible ropes, pouring into the outer path demon statue's mouth. Gaara's previously calm expression contorted, his brow furrowed, and beads of sweat covered his forehead, evidently enduring immense pain. Several dozen minutes later, Deidre watched the chakra being drained away, his eyes filled with envy. He couldn't help but sigh, as expected of a Jinchuriki. "He has plenty of chakra," he thought to himself. While his detonating clay was powerful, each use consumed a vast amount of chakra. If he could possess such a vast chakra supply, his strength would surely soar to new heights, perhaps even reaching the level of a cage. "Are you jealous, kid?" Kisame teased, grinning broadly at Deidre's words. His shark-like face, shimmering in the light and shadow, looked even more sinister. "Shut up, you shark-faced bastard!" Deidre's taunting infuriated him, glaring fiercely at Kisame and attacking his appearance. The two began bickering again, and the atmosphere became quite boisterous. "Quiet," Tendo barked, his commanding voice instantly silencing everyone, who obediently continued drawing chakra from the one tail. A few minutes later, Zetsu suddenly emerged from the ground, his black and white form standing out in the cave. He quickly declared, "There's a pursuer, a Konoha ninja." The events unfolded just as in the original story. Uchiha Itachi opened his eyes. "Leave it to me," the others agreed. Uchiha Itachi was from Konoha and knew its ninjas well. Uchiha Itachi and Kisame used special clones to block the pursuers, while the others continued to focus on extracting the tailed beast. Gaara's expression grew increasingly painful, his body trembling slightly. His skin gradually turned a lifeless pale, his life force draining from him bit by bit. An eye on the outer path demon statue's forehead slowly opened, signaling that the one tail had been successfully extracted from Gaara's body. Extracting a tailed beast from a Jinchuriki usually results in death. "It's finally over," Kakuzu complained, his rune-marked face etched with impatience. He moved his shoulders and muttered, "What a waste of time." He felt the one-tail extraction process was rather drawn out, consuming considerable energy and time, leaving him feeling deeply frustrated. Just as everyone breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to discuss their next move, a dull yet powerful explosion suddenly erupted in the cave. Boom, boom, the sound was like a hammer repeatedly striking a war drum, each blow causing the cave walls to tremble slightly and sending dust cascading down. The cave walls were under intense attack, rocks constantly crumbling and cracks rapidly spreading. "Itachi and Kisame have failed," Scorpion said with a hint of regret and surprise. Everyone knew the strength of Uchiha Itachi and Kisame, and they had assumed their clones would be enough to hold off the pursuers. But in this situation, it was clear they hadn't been able to hold them back. "The clones can only exert 30% of their strength," Kakuzu analyzed, frowning. He was well aware of the limitations of the clone technique. While it could confuse and delay the enemy to a certain extent, it was still far behind the original strength. When facing a formidable opponent, unexpected consequences were indeed possible. "The pursuer is quite powerful." Deidara's eyes were solemn. They knew very well that anyone who could break through the blockade of Itachi and Kisame's clones was no ordinary person, and must possess unique abilities and immense strength. "It's the copy ninja Kakashi," Zetsu pointed out the pursuer's identity. "So it's him." Upon hearing the name, the Akatsuki members showed no sign of panic. After all, aside from Tendo, Sasori, and Deidara, the others present were merely illusions projected through the phantom body jutsu. With these three powerful members present, even if Konoha's Kakashi and his men pursued them, they wouldn't be able to gain any advantage. Chapter 414 Plot Changes. "Leave the intruder to us," Tendo's steady, commanding voice echoed through the cave. He glanced at the Akatsuki members around him and issued a simple, forceful command, "Disperse." Upon hearing this, they released their ninjutsu. In an instant, the illusions projected by the shimmering body technique vanished like smoke, leaving only Tendo, Sasori, and Deidara in the cave, quietly awaiting the intruder's arrival. Boom! Sakura's astonishing power shattered the massive rock blocking the cave entrance, sending boulders flying and clouds of dust billowing. Uzumaki Naruto charged forward, his eyes red with rage and anxiety as he roared, "Give me back Gaara!" At that moment, his mind focused solely on reclaiming his friend Gaara. Everything else was forgotten. Seeing this, Deidara nonchalantly sat down on Gaara's lifeless body, a cynical grin plastered on his face. He challenged, "You're talking about him?" He deliberately provoked Naruto, and seeing his agony, he felt a perverse pleasure well up in his heart. "Get up! Get off Gaara!" Naruto's eyes were bloodshot, and he felt like a powder keg of rage. "You're too late, he's already dead." Deidara didn't stand up, but instead laughed even more recklessly. His laughter echoed through the cave like sharp knives, piercing Naruto and everyone else's hearts. Rage filled Naruto's chest like a surging tide. He could no longer suppress the rage within him, and the Nine Tails chakra began to leak out of him uncontrollably. Naruto's azure eyes gradually turned blood red, and a strange red glow shone from his body. It was the Nine Tails power that was gradually eroding his sanity. "Calm down, Naruto," Sakura rushed forward anxiously, trying to soothe Naruto. If Naruto were completely overwhelmed by the Nine Tails power, the consequences would be disastrous. However, Naruto was so blinded by rage that Sakura's soothing words had no effect. In this critical moment, Kakashi, with quick eyes and hands, darted forward, snatched up Naruto's shirt, and quickly placed a talisman on the seal at his navel. It was a talisman Jiraiya had given him, specifically designed to suppress the Nine Tails chakra. As the talisman was applied, the seal's power instantly intensified, the Nine Tails chakra gradually subsided, and Naruto finally regained his composure. "Kakashi-sensei, Gaara!" Naruto's eyes were filled with helplessness and sorrow. He looked at Kakashi for help, his voice trembling, as if hoping Kakashi would tell him that none of this was true, that Gaara was still alive. "This isn't going well, Chiyo and Sakura," two experienced medical ninjas, had long since seen that Gaara had lost all signs of life. His lifeless body and pale complexion betrayed his death. However, only Naruto foolishly clung to a glimmer of hope, refusing to accept this harsh reality. Meanwhile, Kakashi was most wary of the three members of the Akatsuki organization. Sasori and Deidara had already broken into the Sand Village and abducted the leader, the Kazekage, and now there was a mysterious figure whose power was unknown. The challenge now went beyond simply retrieving Gaara. The most pressing issue was how to ensure everyone's safe escape. Long time no see, Sasori. Chiao slowly stepped forward, her eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions, memories, emotion, and a hint of helplessness. Looking at Sasori, she saw the lonely child she once was. "You've grown old," Sasori's voice remained cold and impassive. But a subtle flicker of emotion flickered in his eyes. "Brother Sasori, is this someone you know?" Deidara asked curiously. He had never seen Sasori react to anyone like this, and he couldn't help but be intrigued by Chiao's identity. Sasori nodded slightly, saying nothing more. "Then I'll leave Kakashi and the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki to me," Deidara said, quickly forming hand seals and conjuring a giant flying bird from clay. He grabbed Gaara's body, jumped onto the bird, and with a flap of his wings, flew out of the cave, giving no one a chance to react. "Stop," Naruto, distraught, immediately followed. How could he bear to see Gaara's body being carried away? Kakashi, worried about Naruto's misfortune, also prepared to follow, but just then, Tendao slowly floated into the air and said calmly, "Don't worry, I won't interrupt you." He seemed uninterested in participating in the seemingly personal fight, simply hovering quietly in the air. Only Chiao and Sakura remained in the cave, and they joined forces to deal with Sasori. Sakura inherited Tsunade's medical ninjutsu and supernatural powers. Her supernatural strength effectively countered puppeteers in close combat, while Chiao, a master puppeteer, mastered the art to perfection. The two worked in perfect harmony, engaging Scorpion in a back-and-forth battle. However, the tide of battle soon shifted. Seeing his attack unable to defeat Scorpion, Scorpion finally summoned the third Kazekage's puppet. Meanwhile, in the distant Hidden Rain village, Weiss watched the battle through the eyes of heaven. He frowned slightly, thinking to himself, Scorpion is definitely holding back. Judging by the rhythm and force of Scorpion's attacks, he didn't seem to be exerting his full strength. Furthermore, Weiss keenly sensed that Scorpion seemed to be showing signs of self-destruction. However, Weiss decided not to intervene, leaving everything to Scorpion's own judgment. After all, everyone has their own choices and destiny. As the battle intensified, Scorpion unleashed the ninja world's most advanced puppetry techniques, including the human puppet and the red secret technique of 100 machines. For a moment, puppets danced and iron sands flew through the cave. Not to be outdone, Chiao and her Chikamatsu Ninshu also displayed peak puppetry skills, engaging in a desperate struggle with Scorpion's puppets. But Chiao was old, her strength and energy diminished, while Scorpion was at the peak of his powers. Gradually, the balance of victory began to tilt in Scorpion's favor. "He's letting me win, but he hasn't committed suicide." Did the information change his mind? Weiss speculated. Scorpion was a perfectionist, and he believed human puppetry technology had perhaps reached its limit. With his own knowledge and abilities, he couldn't further advance it, which was undoubtedly torture for him. Furthermore, perhaps he still felt a lingering sense of guilt towards Chiao, which is why he sought death in the original novel. The information Weiss provided, revealing the possibility of further advancements in puppetry, led to a change of heart in this battle. Chapter 415 Kai. As expected, Scorpion seized the opportunity and manipulated the third Kazekage to trap Chiao and Sakura with iron sand. The iron sand enveloped them like a surging tide, impenetrable. Simultaneously, Scorpion unleashed a deadly toxin that permeated the air around them. Chiao and Sakura's bodies weakened from the inhalation of the poison, and they soon lost their ability to resist. Scorpion slowly approached Chiao, taking in her haggard face with a mixture of emotions. He softly called, "Grandma." Chiao gasped, her eyes filled with mixed emotions. She smiled wryly and said, "Haha, you've grown, Scorpion. It's just a pity." Her words expressed joy for Scorpion's growth, but even more regret for the once kind child who had now embarked on such a path of no return. "If only I had spent more time with you, had I recognized the darkness within you." Chiao's voice was filled with regret. But it was too late. Some mistakes, once made, can never be undone. The two stared at each other for a long moment, a sadness and resignation filling the air. "It's all over." Scorpion was silent for a moment before slowly pulling out the knife stuck in the ground and swinging it at Chiyo. Chiyo closed her eyes, accepting her fate. "Grandma Chiyo," Sakura cried anxiously. A flash of green light flashed, and Xiaoli rushed in like a cheetah, kicking the knife out of Scorpion's hand. Then, with a loud cry of Konoha rising wind, he struck Scorpion in the jaw, sending him flying into the air. Xiaoli arrived and planned to unleash a flurry of kicks to defeat Scorpion. However, sharp blades suddenly emerged from various parts of Scorpion's body, each laced with poison and gleaming with an icy cold light. Seeing this, Xiaoli had to abandon his pursuit, believing a rash attack would only put him in danger. They both fell to the ground. Xiaoli tried to help Chiyo and Sakura free, but the iron sand was too strong for him to break alone. Just then, Hyuga Niji, Tenten, and Guy arrived. Guy looked a little weak, the after effects of using the 8 gates. "You guys," Sakura was surprised to see reinforcements arriving, and a glimmer of hope suddenly ignited in her heart. "Kakashi-sensei said you need help here." Tenten quickly explained the reason and then began to think about how to break the iron sand. She was well versed in ninja tools, and in her opinion, iron sand could also be considered ninja tools, so perhaps there was a way to break them. "There are 2 enemies," Sakura quickly explained the current situation, giving everyone a clear understanding of the situation. "You're handling it with ease." Niji activated his Byakugan and observed Tendo carefully. His brow furrowed slightly, and he thought to himself, what a strange chakra. It doesn't sound like a living person at all. The Byakugan's special ability allowed him to detect Tendo's abnormality, making him wary of him. "Boss, my puppets and chakra are almost exhausted," Sasori said to Tendo. Aside from Chiyo, he had no interest in anyone else. After this fierce battle, his puppets were indeed severely damaged, especially the third Kazakage, which needed extensive repairs to regain its combat effectiveness. "Yes, retreat." Tendo nodded slightly, giving the order. Without hesitation, Scorpion turned and left, his figure gradually disappearing into the shadows of the cave. Tendo slowly floated down and stood before the crowd. Seeing this, Chiyo, drawing on her vast experience, determined Tendo's identity. "Be careful, this man is no ordinary person. The one who commands Scorpion is likely the leader of Akatsuki." "Leader?" Kai's face darkened at this. He immediately shielded his disciples behind him, adopting a defensive stance. Weiss's gaze fell on Kai, and Kai felt his hair stand on end, a strong sense of danger washing over him. Without hesitation, he shouted, "Open the 6th gate, Jinman." He instantly activated the 8 gates of ninjutsu. His body erupted with a powerful aura, and the air around him seemed to ignite. "Run!" Kai shouted at his disciples, his instincts frantically warning him, every cell in his body trembling. This unprecedented sense of danger made him realize that the enemy before him was far more formidable than he had imagined. Even after training his body to the limit, he had never encountered anything like this before, and it only reinforced his conviction that the enemy was no nemesis. "Teacher," Xiaoli had never seen Kai like this before. His eyes were filled with shock and worry, but he knew he had to obey his teacher's orders. "Lee, take them away," Kai shouted again, his tone filled with unquestionable determination. Xiaoli was stunned, but soon realized what was happening and shouted, "Let's go." Tenten still didn't understand what was happening, but she knew they had to follow Xiaoli. "But these iron sands aren't here yet," Tenten said hesitantly. Seeing this, Kai exerted his strength and kicked the iron sands apart, clearing a path for everyone to escape. Xiaoli picked up Sakura and Chiyo and bolted out of the cave, his speed as fast as the wind. Niji also picked up Tenten, who hadn't reacted yet, and followed closely behind. "What the hell is going on?" Tenten complained, looking back in Guy's direction, her heart filled with confusion and worry. "Teacher," Lee said, his voice choking. Guy was ready to sacrifice himself to protect them. However, Weiss didn't stop them from leaving. All these people combined weren't worth as much as Guy's body. Weiss's consciousness descended directly into Tendo's body. "Let me witness the legendary 8 gates." "Your voice? No, you've completely changed. Beast-like instincts," Weiss praised, looking at Guy with admiration in his eyes. "You can use this body as my puppet." The enemy is hiding in the shadows. Guy was secretly on guard, watching his surroundings warily, ready to defend against any sneak attack. "Don't worry, my real body is in the Hidden Rain village," Weiss said calmly, his voice possessing a magical power that made him believe his words. This is the land of grass. What a terrifying jutsu. Kai realized Weiss wasn't lying, but his sense of danger remained undimmed. The enemy before him possessed abilities beyond his wildest imagination. Weiss studied Kai, deeply intrigued by this jutsu that could unleash extraordinary power in ordinary people. Come on, he casually waved toward Kai. Chapter 416 Youth. Might Kai's body erupted with blazing energy, every muscle tensing like a string. Towards the peacock, like a flash of ignited lightning, Kai delivered a swift, high-speed punch at a speed beyond the reach of human vision. The wind from his fist whistled, fiercely rubbing against the surrounding air. The air ignited from the friction. With his ultimate control of power, Kai perfectly fused the powerful shock waves created by the impact with the blazing flames. The flames intertwined and transformed in the sky, ultimately creating a magnificent and awe-inspiring scene like a peacock spreading its feathers. The entire sky was transformed into a sea of inferno, and the battlefield was illuminated by a blazing light. Like a meteor shower, the flames rained down upon Shyandao. Faced with such a ferocious and deadly attack, Shyandao's eyes showed no sign of panic or fear. He simply gazed calmly at the incoming flames. Shinra Tensei, in an instant, a repulsive force powerful enough to warp space erupted in all directions, centered around him like an invisible yet immensely powerful storm. Kai's attack was like a fragile bubble, instantly dissolving into nothingness. The blazing flames were extinguished by the force. However, Kai's seemingly ferocious attack was actually a carefully planned feint. Just as Shyandao was fully focused on countering the flaming attack, Kai, with the astonishing speed honed by years of arduous training, leaped in front of him. Seventh gate, shocking gate, open, blue steam, like surging waves, instantly enveloped him. Kai's hands clasped together with lightning speed and began frantically compressing the surrounding air. As his hands squeezed, the air became increasingly compressed, its density increasing, and its pressure intensifying. Kai thrust his hands forward swiftly, and the compressed air instantly released a tremendous amount of energy, transforming into an air cannon shaped like a tiger. The tiger bared its fangs and claws, lashing out with a deafening roar as it fiercely bit into Tendo's body. Daytime Tiger, the powerful impact instantly sent Tendo flying. Like a meteor, his body, trailing a long trail, slammed heavily into the stone wall. With a dull, resounding crash, the stone wall instantly crumbled, sending countless fragments flying. The resulting shockwave was even more devastating. Wherever it passed, the entire cave was flattened like paper. The violent tremors, like a massive earthquake, shook the entire earth, the force of which could be felt even 10 kilometers away. This sudden, devastating movement caught the attention of Lee, Kakashi, and the rest of the Konoha community, as well as Sasori and Deidara. Sasori exclaimed in amazement, "What a powerful technique! Is there such a person in Konoha?" In his opinion, such terrifying attack power would undoubtedly rank among the best, even in the Akatsuki, a force renowned for its formidable strength, enough to draw anyone's attention. Kai's chest heaved violently as he stared intently at the center of the explosion, his eyes filled with anticipation for the impact of his attack. He silently prayed, hoping that this blow would inflict a fatal blow on his enemy. However, as the smoke and dust gradually cleared, Shyandao emerged unscathed, his step steady and his posture composed. Not even his signature black robes were wrinkled or damaged. Shyandao slowly raised his head and looked at Kai, his face expressionless. He said calmly, "You're well-trained, able to fire an air cannon with physical skills." Even Kai, always optimistic and enthusiastic, felt a wave of deep frustration when he saw that his all-out attack had no effect. But soon, the fiery fire in Kai's eyes rekindled, stronger and more determined than before. He clenched his fists and shouted, "But youth doesn't allow for discouragement." Weiss, within Shyandao's body, could clearly see Kai's every move and every change of emotion through his Rinnegan. What a freak! He couldn't understand how Kai could suddenly ignite such intense fighting spirit. Kai bent his legs slightly, his knee muscles tensing like iron. Bang! He stomped hard, creating a deep crater. The ground around the crater cracked, forming a giant spider web. The reaction force instantly transformed Kai into a shadow, hurtling towards Shyandao at near instantaneous speed. At that moment, Kai seemed to have transformed his body into an indestructible, ultimate weapon. His fists, elbows, knees, and every part of his body became a deadly weapon. His attacks were as dense and intense as a torrential rain, as swift as lightning, attacking Shyandao relentlessly. Each strike carried a whistling sound and immense force. However, Kai's attacks were like hitting an invisible wall, each one blocked by an invisible barrier. Furthermore, as Kai's attacks continued, the repulsive force grew stronger. Each rebound felt like being struck by a sledgehammer, his body in excruciating pain. Shyandao stood calmly, observing Kai's frenzied attacks. This level of force won't break my repulsive barrier. With that, he unleashed Shinra Tensei once again. This time, the repulsive force erupted like a raging tsunami, with overwhelming force. Everything around him, from boulders and trees to scattered weapons, was mercilessly flung back by the repulsive force. Kai had no time to react, as he was hurled 1,000 meters away by the overwhelming force. His body traced a long arc through the air, then, like a kite with its string cut, fell heavily to the ground. Shyandao slowly floated in the air, like a lofty god, gazing down at Kai below. His eyes were filled with mockery and defiance as he said, "Is that all you can do? Can't you open the death gate? Let me see." Kai's heart trembled. How did you know that? Opening the death gate had always been his secret. He hadn't even told Kakashi, and only Lee, whom he considered his successor, knew. Now is not the time to dwell on this. The enemy is more than Lee and the others can handle. To protect his disciples, to preserve the bonds he had with his companions, and to safeguard the honor of Konoha village, Guy decided to risk everything, even his life. Chapter 417 Withering. Kai's right hand trembled slightly, and he slowly raised his thumb, then thrust it suddenly toward his heart. In that instant, Kai's heart seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand, and it stopped beating. Time around him seemed to stand still, and the entire world fell into dead silence. But seconds later, boom, 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 the sound of his heartbeat, like the pounding of a war drum, echoed from Kai's chest, echoing everywhere. The sound grew louder and louder, like a cry of life. Blood-red steam, like a demon rising from the abyss of hell, instantly enveloped Kai. Kai's skin, eyebrows, and hair instantly turned a dark red, the color of burning life. His chakra materialized at that moment, forming a visible red aura. The powerful wave of power shook the surrounding air. Weiss observed the flow of chakra within Kai and the operation of the 8 gates ninjutsu as clearly as if reading an open book. Sure enough, it's useless to me. This technique, which drained all life force in exchange for power, was extremely powerful, but it was not suitable for Weiss. Weiss's magical repertoire contained numerous similar spells capable of unleashing immense power, but he simply hadn't practiced them. The 8 gates of ninjutsu is classified as forbidden, both because of its immense power and because of the extreme strain it exacted on the practitioner. Less than 1 in 10,000 people could successfully open the 8th gate. This required not only exceptional physical fitness, capable of withstanding the immense impact of the 8 gates opening, but also unwavering perseverance and determination, the relentless grinding of the body day after day, endured through tedious and arduous training. Practitioners underwent intense physical training, constantly pushing their bodies to their limits, and countless falls and rises. Perhaps only someone as pure-minded, resolute, and filled with conviction and perseverance as might Guy could persevere. "This is my last youth," Guy roared. He stamped heavily on the air, and as if tamed by his power, the air began to race around the heavenly Dao. His speed reached an extreme speed, the surrounding air being pulled by his body, creating visible streams of air. His figure left countless after-images, and from a distance, it looked as if dozens of kites were surrounding Tendao. Zixiang Yezu, he swung his fist fiercely. The wind whistled, creating a powerful air cannon. Weiss, sensing the force of the blow, immediately increased his repulsive force. The repulsive force and the air cannon collided violently, instantly detonating the surrounding air and producing a violent explosion. Under the powerful impact, the surrounding space seemed to be twisted by an invisible hand, briefly creating a vacuum. Tendao's body was also knocked to the ground by the powerful impact. The surrounding ground ripped apart like torn paper. If Nagato had been controlling Tendao's body at this moment, Kai's blow would have shattered him to pieces. But with Weiss in control, the blow merely covered Tendao's body in a layer of dust. Honkai groaned in pain. The previous punch had cracked the bones in his right arm. His face etched with pain, yet his eyes burned with an even stronger fighting spirit. Seeing his enemy so unharmed, such a formidable foe only fueled Kai's fiercest fighting spirit. 2 legs, 3 legs, Kai, ignoring the pain, punched relentlessly. Each blow compressed the air into a cannonball. But these attacks were unable to penetrate the repulsive barrier of the heavenly Dao. The ground was pounded with deep, dense craters by the mighty attack. The surrounding mountains collapsed under the impact, roaring with trembling roars. Huge rocks rolled down, sending up clouds of dust. The animals in the forest sensed this terrifying force and began to flee in panic. Birds cried in fear in the air, and wild beasts fled frantically through the mountains and forests, fleeing from this dangerous place. Teacher Kai, Zio Li looked at the red figure in the sky, tears instantly blurring his eyes. His lips trembled, his heart filled with grief and reluctance. Using the eighth gate, Kai faced only death. Niji Hyuga and Tenten were equally overcome with emotion. After years of daily interaction with Guy, they had a deep respect for the seemingly naive but in reality incredibly responsible and warm-hearted teacher. Niji's eyes were filled with resentment and self-blame, and he clenched his fists. Still too weak, I can't even withstand a single attack like that. Not only Niji, but also Naruto, Kakashi, Chiyo, even Sasori and Itara were stunned by the immense power unleashed after Guy opened the eighth gate. Guy transcended human limits. Naruto's mouth dropped open, his eyes filled with disbelief. Kakashi's eyes were filled with worry and admiration. Chiyo's face was filled with surprise and regret. Sasori and Itara's eyes flickered with fear. Under such an attack, most people would be lucky to survive intact. Sasori stared at the scroll in his hand, a wave of confusion rising in his heart. What avail is the puppetry I pursue in the face of such power? Even a puppet crafted by the third Kazekage wouldn't be able to withstand even a single blow from Kai's attack. His years of dedicated pursuit of puppetry were met with a crushing blow at this moment. Shiandao gazed down at the now exhausted Kai, a trace of mockery on his face. Anything you wish to say? At this moment, Kai's life was like a candle in the wind, ready to be extinguished at any moment. His body was riddled with wounds, yet he hadn't given up. He braced himself on the ground with his hands, crouching low, each movement an effort. He took a deep breath and shouted, "Accumulate." Red steam quickly condensed into a dragon, enveloping Kai tightly. The dragon-like steam bared its fangs and claws, unleashing Kai's full power. Night Kai, with his last remaining strength, Kai roared furiously. It felt as if boiling magma flowed through his meridians, his body covered in crimson veins, and he seemed like the bringer of destruction. "Is this your final performance?" Weiss looked at Kai, feeling somewhat disappointed. While the attack was powerful, with his abilities, dodging it was a piece of cake. Swish, Kai rushed towards Shiandao like a cannonball. Chapter 418 Flying Ashes. Everything in its path, boulders, trees, and other obstacles, was shattered by the overwhelming force. The earth seemed to be split open by a sharp blade, a gaping gash forming. Kai leaped to his feet and launched a powerful kick at Shiandao. This kick contained all his life, all his faith, all his strength. Shiandao didn't dodge, that would be tedious. He calmly raised his repulsive barrier to block the blow. The force of Kai's attack was so overwhelming that even space itself was slightly warped. Visible ripples appeared in the air beneath Kai's kick. Kai's kick broke through the repulsive barrier and struck Shiandao squarely in the chest. The immense force instantly rippled Shiandao's body, sending fragments flying like fireworks. The aftermath of the attack, like a raging tsunami, radiated wildly in all directions from Shiandao's center. The surrounding terrain was instantly and completely transformed by this force. Under this force, the surrounding mountains were instantly flattened like blocks being pushed down by a giant. The dense forest vanished in the blink of an eye, trees uprooted and reduced to flying sawdust. "Success," Guy whispered faintly, using his last bit of strength. His body was charred black, his skin cracked, his blood dried. His life was drawing to a close, yet a faint smile of relief crossed his face. However, to his surprise, Tendo's shattered body had reassembled. Guy stared at Tendo, his eyes filled with confusion and resentment. His lips trembled slightly, as he tried to speak, but he no longer had the strength to speak. Tendo looked at Guy and said calmly, "I told you it was just a puppet. Lee, Niji, Tenten, Kakashi, I'm sorry, I didn't stop the enemy." In a trance, Guy saw his entire life flash before his eyes like a revolving lantern. He saw himself as a child at ninja school, ridiculed but persevering in his training. He saw himself training with his father, his encouraging eyes. He saw himself and his companions carrying out missions, facing challenges together. Finally, he saw his father, giving him a thumbs up and flashing his signature smile. A gentle breeze, like a messenger of sorrow, quietly drifted across the devastated battlefield. Might Guy's form, once ablaze with brilliance in battle, was now as fragile as dust. Under the gentle breeze, it shattered like a dreamlike bubble. Each fragment, carrying his passion and faith, transformed into fine ash, drifting slowly on the wind, gradually dissipating between heaven and earth. Diderot was the first to arrive at the battlefield. He sat atop a giant claybird that spun through the sky. Diderot's gaze was drawn to the drastically altered landscape below. The once rolling mountains had now been reduced to a flat plain, and the lush forests had vanished, replaced by a desolate and dead silence. "This is the power of the boss," Diderot muttered to himself, beads of cold sweat forming on his forehead and trickling down his cheeks. Even my C0 couldn't do this. His voice trembled slightly, his eyes filled with shock and awe. The power displayed by Tendo in his battle with Guy far exceeded his imagination, causing him to deeply doubt his own abilities for the first time. Not only Diderot, but also Kakashi, Naruto, and the rest of Konoha were utterly horrified by the scene before them. Kakashi, telescope in hand, fixed his gaze on the unharmed Tendo. "Such power," he gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. "You're kidding. He's not even hurt." Kakashi's hands trembled slightly. Facing such a formidable foe, Konoha village was about to face an unprecedented crisis. Sensing someone spying, Tendo slowly raised his head, his gaze like a sharp arrow, aiming in Kakashi's direction. "Retreat," Kakashi ordered without hesitation, his voice filled with undeniable resolve. "The enemy is not our equal. If Konoha village didn't retreat immediately, it would be an utter annihilation." However, Uzumaki Naruto refused to give up. "Gaara!" Naruto clenched his fists, tears glistening in his eyes, his heart still etched in his heart for his fallen friend. "Naruto!" Kakashi stared sternly into Naruto's eyes and shouted, "Do you want Sakura and the others to die in vain?" Naruto's body trembled at the words. Though impulsive, he wasn't foolish. He knew clearly that, let alone Tendo, even Guy, who had opened the seventh gate, was no match for him. The best course of action now was to bring this information back to Konoha to buy the village more time to prepare. "I understand." Naruto lowered his head, tears streaming down his face. His shoulders trembled slightly, his heart filled with pain and helplessness. Kakashi looked at Naruto and sighed. He knew now wasn't the time to comfort Naruto. Time was running out, they had to leave as soon as possible. Turning and sprinting towards Konoha, Naruto, suppressing his grief, followed Kakashi. "Your opponent has escaped," Tendo warned Diderot calmly. "What?" Diderot's eyes flickered with resentment, and he immediately attempted to control the giant clay bird to chase after him. However, Tendo raised a hand to stop him. "The mission is accomplished. Don't worry about them. We'll deal with these small fry later." Tendo's voice was cold and firm, leaving no room for doubt. But the Nine-Tails, Diderot wanted to argue a little more. After all, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki held a huge allure for the Akatsuki. "Didn't you hear me?" Tendo's gaze flashed with a fierceness, and his rinnegan slowly shifted within its sockets, radiating a powerful sense of pressure. Under the gaze of the rinnegan, Diderot felt an invisible pressure bearing down on him, nearly suffocating him. He lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "I heard you clearly." After today's battle, Diderot had witnessed the terrifying power of the heavenly path, and he had become much more docile. Elsewhere, Kakashi and Shio, after much difficulty, finally brought intelligence back to the village. Upon hearing the news, Konoha and Sunagakure villages were immediately on high alert. Sunagakure was especially vulnerable, having just lost a fourth Kazekage, Gaara, leaving Chiyo and Ebizo as temporary acting Kazekages. A tense atmosphere permeated the village, and the villagers were in a state of panic. Tsunade, the fifth Hokage, understood the gravity of the situation and immediately shared the information with Kumagakure, Kirigakure, and Iwagakure, hoping they would collectively be vigilant against the Akatsuki threat. However, the results were minimal. The Hidden Cloud Village believed itself too powerful to be easily provoked by the Akatsuki. The Hidden Mist Village remained shrouded in secrecy, responding only perfunctorily to Tsunade's warnings. The Hidden Rock Village, however, felt that perhaps Konoha Village was exaggerating and didn't truly take it seriously. Tsunade read these responses with a heavy heart. She knew that a great storm was about to sweep across the ninja world. And Konoha Village and the other villages must be fully prepared to survive it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Konoha. One after another, the Akatsuki successfully captured the 6 Jinchuriki, from the 2 to the 7 tails. One by one, the Akatsuki extracted the tailed beasts from their bodies. With the infusion of the tailed beast's power, the once shrunken and withered outer path demon statue gradually came to life, as if infused with a fresh soul. Its body began to plump up, and a mysterious and powerful aura emanated from it. Only the 8 tails and the 9 tails remain. Uchiha Obito stood before the outer path demon statue, his eyes gleaming with uncontrollable excitement. The grand and madly longed for dream he had cherished for so many years now seemed within reach. However, he also knew that the remaining 2 Jinchuriki were no easy task. Killer Bee, the 8 tails Jinchuriki, was a perfect Jinchuriki, forging a deep rapport with the 8 tails, Ushiki, making him immensely powerful. In battle, he not only wielded the 8 tails power with ease, but also seamlessly integrated it with his own ninjutsu, unleashing unimaginable combat power. The 9 tails Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto, has always been considered a top priority by Konoha Village, so closely guarded that even Zetsu, skilled in stealth and intelligence gathering, has been unable to gather any useful information about him. Leave the 8 tails to Sasuke, Uchiha Obito suggested to Tendo after a moment's deliberation. He's awakened his main Gekyo Sharingan, and with its powerful power, he can effectively counter the tailed beasts. Just as in the original story, Sasuke joined the Akatsuki through a combination of coincidences and Obito's guidance. However, during the battle with Deidara, Weiss's unexpected intervention changed the situation, and Deidara didn't die as in the original story. Whatever, Weiss responded to Uchiha Obito's suggestion with a nonchalant attitude. Recently, the Akatsuki has suffered significant losses. Hilton and Kokuzu, members of the immortal duo, as well as the powerful Uchiha Itachi, have fallen for various reasons. Now Sasuke had been tricked by Obito into capturing the 8 tails. Even if Sasuke tragically died in the process, it wouldn't matter to Weiss. As for the 9 tails Jinchuriki, Uzumaki Naruto, I'll do it myself. If you do it, it's a sure thing, Obito quickly agreed, feigning reassurance. However, as he turned and left Tendo's sight, his expression darkened, like the darkness before a storm. Zetsu Obito whispered. As soon as he finished speaking, Zetsu's black and white figure slowly emerged from the ground. There's something wrong with his strength, Obito said gravely, frowning. He personally went to the side of Tendo's battle. The extent of the destruction there was beyond imagination, a terrifying destructive force that even Susanoo couldn't match. Black Zetsu nodded. The destructive power of Guy after he activated the 8 gates reached the level of the 6 paths. Nagato definitely didn't possess such power. Could it be that Nagato has completely mastered the Rinnegan? A thought flashed through Obito's mind. Impossible. The Rinnegan belongs to Madara-sama. No one else can completely control it. Black Zetsu decisively denied Obito's speculation. The two fell into a brief silence. The situation had clearly deviated from Obito's original plan, and how to recover the Rinnegan had become a thorny problem. They were both at a loss for what to do, helplessly choosing to take it one step at a time and adapt accordingly. Meanwhile, Kakashi, after overcoming many difficulties, finally brought important intelligence on the Akatsuki organization back to Konoha Village. Upon hearing the news, Tsunade's expression was solemn. She acted decisively and urgently recalled Jiraiya, who was traveling abroad. Kakashi also took several photos of Tendo. Tsunade looked at the photos and felt that he looked more and more familiar, but she could not remember where she had seen him before. She only vaguely remembered that he seemed to be related to Jiraiya in some way. When Jiraiya saw the photo, he instantly recognized it as his former disciple Yohiko. With a complex expression, he recounted in detail how he had taken in Nagato, Yohiko, and Konan in the Land of Rain and taught them ninjutsu, along with information about the Rinnegan. Konoha's intelligence team quickly sprang into action. Combining the backgrounds of Nagato, Yohiko, and Konan, as well as Akatsuki's past activities and other clues, they conducted a thorough investigation and ultimately determined that Akatsuki's headquarters was in the Hidden Rain village. Upon learning this, Jiraiya was distraught and planned to infiltrate the village alone to gather intelligence. However, his idea was firmly stopped by Tsunade and the others. After all, Tendo had demonstrated immense strength in his battle with Guy, and everyone knew that Jiraiya would be courting death if he ventured there rashly. The most important thing now is Naruto. Akatsuki's actions are clearly aimed at the Jinchuriki, Tsunade said gravely. Jiraiya gradually calmed down after hearing this. While he was concerned about what Nagato and the other two had been through over the years, and was filled with doubt and worry, he was more concerned about Naruto's safety. After all, if the Akatsuki had successfully invaded the Sand Village and abducted the Kazekage, they would surely not spare Konoha either. Breaking into Konoha and capturing Naruto wasn't out of the question. We have no choice but to bring Naruto back to Meiboku-san. It's also a good opportunity for Naruto to advance to the next stage of his training, Jiraiya said after a moment's thought. With the enemy now so formidable, Naruto's strength needed to be strengthened as quickly as possible to cope with the impending crisis. Cultivating Sage Mode was undoubtedly a crucial step in boosting Naruto's power. Jiraiya hurriedly left Konoha-san with Naruto, heading for Meiboku-san to begin his training. Meanwhile, Konoha-san was placed on high alert. Tsunade issued orders, recalling numerous experts from missions and organizing the orderly evacuation of civilians. This news spread like a bombshell throughout the ninja world. Not since the three great ninja wars had Konoha-san been so threatened, leading to speculation. Could the legendary Uchiha Madara have been resurrected? Tsunade's decisions were questioned by her two advisors and Danzo. They thought Tsunade might be overreacting, overly nervous. However, Tsunade was adamant, firmly ordering that all measures be strictly enforced. Soon, everything was ready. Konoha Village was like a fortress on high alert, ready to face the incoming enemy, like a turtle in a jar, waiting for the enemy to fall into its trap. It was a sunny day, and the sky was a sapphire blue. However, beneath the seemingly calm surface of Konoha Village, there was a hidden atmosphere of tension. Will someone really attack the village? A young ninja muttered. Who knows? Anyway, that's what the Hokage said, his companion shrugged helplessly. Chapter 420 Invasion. Konoha Village, usually bustling with activity, now seemed eerily deserted. Aside from the remaining ninja, civilians, the elderly, the weak, women, and children had all been evacuated to safe areas. The shops and stores lining the streets were tightly closed, their doors locked, a scene of desolation. Some privately questioned Tsunade. After all, the past few days had been peaceful, with no signs of large-scale ninja forces on the border. Suddenly, a high-pitched bird cry pierced the stillness. A patrolling Jinan instinctively looked up, a sense of strangeness welling up in his heart. Strange. There's no such bird in the land of fire, he muttered to himself. The bird flew lower and lower, and he could gradually make out its features. Its wingspan exceeded 10 meters, its size was enormous, and its body bore obvious signs of modification. Most puzzling of all, its pupils were circular. What? A summoning beast, the Jinan reacted instantly, alarmed, and immediately sounded the alarm. Enemy attack, his voice echoed through the streets, sharp and rapid. Enemy in the air. Hearing the alarm, the other ninjas responded. In an instant, the rooftops were filled with ninjas, their faces tense and on full alert. Intercept it, the ninjas shouted in unison. Unfortunately, the strange bird was flying too high and too far away for ordinary ninjas' ninjutsu to reach it. The bird, seemingly sensing the hostility of the ninjas below, became enraged. With a sharp cry, it dived rapidly, hurtling towards Konoha Village like a cannonball. Just as everyone expected a direct attack, the bird swiftly straightened itself, dropped a strange egg, and soared high. The Konoha ninjas ducked for cover as the egg slammed heavily against a building with a dull thud. Is this its egg? A Jinan examined the egg curiously, his mind filled with confusion. The next second, the egg began to glow, emitting a strange light. No! Get out of the way, an experienced ninja shouted, but it was too late. Boom! With a resounding roar, the light instantly transformed into a powerful explosion, killing everyone nearby and shattering houses, sending clouds of smoke and dust billowing into the air. The strange bird in the sky seemed determined not to give up. It swooped down again, this time dropping dozens of bombs at once. The bombs rained down like raindrops, instantly destroying a street. Flames shot into the sky, and screams echoed. Like a relentless bomber, the strange bird unleashed its devastation on Konoha Village, and ordinary ninjas were powerless to stop its attacks. Double transformation jutsu. At this critical moment, Akemichi Chusa stepped forward. He formed hand seals, and his body began to rapidly expand, transforming into a 10-meter-tall giant in the blink of an eye. He spread his arms like a towering mountain and shouted, "Come!" This time, The strange bird aimed at Akimichi Choza and let out a piercing cry. Swoosh, it swooped down at breakneck speed, ripping through the air and whipping up a gust of wind. Undeterred, Akimichi Choza stood firm. As the strange bird approached, he thrust out his hands, precisely clamping down on its beak. The immense force of the impact sent his body spiraling backwards, his feet leaving deep marks on the ground. He finally came to a stop, having crashed through dozens of buildings. Akimichi Choza took a horse stance, simultaneously exerting force from his legs, waist, and arms. Veins bulged as if he had used all his strength as he hurled the strange bird. It crashed into a building like a meteor. Bang! A puff of smoke instantly rose. Great! It's gone, a ninja shouted excitedly. Is this the enemy? A Hyuga ninja, still on guard, frowned and warned, be careful. There's someone in the smoke. As expected, as the smoke gradually dissipated, Pain's 6 paths, clad in a black robe with red clouds, stood quietly amid the ruins. They sensed the surrounding chakra but detected no trace of the Nine Tails. Is it hidden in Mount Myaboku? Weiss pondered. If so, then destroy Konoha and force Naruto to appear. Summoning Jutsu, the animal path, expressionless, pressed a hand to the ground and shouted. Bang, 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 with a series of resounding explosions, 4 massive summon beasts, the splitting dog, the centipede, the rhino, and the bull, were summoned in a flash. As soon as these 4 summoned beasts appeared, they began to wreak havoc on the surrounding environment. Their immense size and incredible strength toppled buildings and ravaged streets wherever they went. The attacks of the Shin'en and Chunin were like scratching an itch, inflicting no real damage. After all, most ninjutsu were designed for other ninja, not for dealing with such massive and powerful creatures. Destroy Konoha village and force out the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, Weiss coldly commanded through the body of the 6 paths of pain. Upon hearing this, the 6 paths of pain immediately dispersed. Each of the 6 pains had been strengthened by Weiss, now possessing the strength of a cage. 6 cage-level masters wreaked havoc on Konoha village. In a single encounter, hundreds of Konoha ninjas perished like fragile ants under the fierce attacks of the 6 paths of pain and the giant summoned beasts. Blood splattered, screams rang out, and the entire village was instantly shrouded in the shadow of death. Retreat. Narashikaku was terrified. He knew the urgency of the situation and shouted at the top of his lungs, all Shin'en and Chunin, retreat. In a battle like this, Shin'en and Chunin remaining would not only be ineffective, but would only become a burden. Facing a cage-level powerhouse with special abilities, only a special Jonin could effectively contain them. Though filled with resentment, the Shin'en and Chunin understood that obedience was paramount. As they evacuated the battlefield, they each carried their injured companions on their backs and retreated quickly and orderly to safety. Summoning Jutsu, at this crucial moment, Tsunade quickly formed hand seals, and amidst a puff of smoke, a gigantic slug appeared before everyone's eyes. It was the slug from the wet-bone forest, massive and slippery. Upon its appearance, the slug immediately unleashed a spray of acid at the troublesome split dog. The acid, like a torrent of green, carried a pungent odor, as it rushed towards the split dog at breakneck speed. Unable to avoid the attack, the split dog was instantly engulfed by the acid. A sizzling sound was heard as the acid rapidly corroded the split dog's body. In a single encounter, the once ferocious split dog was reduced to a pool of blood under the acid's attack. Chapter 421 Black Hole. It's Tsunade Sama's summoning beast. Great, we're saved, the Konoha ninja's morale soared at this sight. A green-robed figure descended from the sky like a meteor. It was Tsunade. Her eyes were steely, filled with endless rage and determination, and she raised her right foot high. Ten kick, her right heel slammed into Tendo, rending the air with a sharp whistling sound. However, Tendo remained calm, a faint glow emanating from his body. Tsunade's attack was instantly deflected by an invisible force, sending her flying like a kite with its string cut. Tsunade spun several times in the air before, with her powerful taijutsu skills, she painstakingly dissipated the rebounding force and landed steadily on the ground. At that moment, Tsunade's handsome face was itched with a terrifying intensity, her eyes red as she glared at Tendo, demanding, "You're Jiraiya's disciple, why are you doing this?" If Nagato were still alive, he might have argued with Tsunade, expounding on his principles and suffering. But it was Weiss who now controlled the 6 paths of pain. Without further ado, he coldly declared, the location of Mount Myaboku. Tsunade's heart trembled at this, the enemy already knows Naruto is hiding in Mount Myaboku. She gritted her teeth and didn't answer. As the two confronted each other, masters from various ninja clans in Konoha village arrived. Exceptional ninjas like Sakura and Yamato also joined the fray, quickly surrounding the 6 paths of pain in a tight circle. This is the Rinnegan. Hinata Hayashi stood among the crowd, his gaze fixed on Tendo's eyes, a flicker of unquenchable curiosity and desire. The Rinnegan, Sharingan, and Byakugan are known as the 3 great eye techniques of the ninja world. Among them, the Rinnegan has always been a legendary entity, shrouded in mystery. The Byakugan's combat power has always seemed inferior to the Sharingan, leading to constant battle between the Hyuga and Uchiha clans, each seeking to prove the superiority of their own family's eye techniques. Now, upon witnessing the legendary Rinnegan with his own eyes, how could this not be instantly ignited by curiosity and a thirst for discovery? Not only Hyuga Hayashi, but also Danzo, lurking in the shadows, also coveted the Rinnegan. His sinister gaze pierced through the gaps in the crowd, fixed intently on Tendo's eyes, secretly plotting how to seize this formidable power for himself. A bunch of rabble, Weiss said with a condescending air, looking down at the Konoha ninjas surrounding him. It seems you've been prepared. Weiss had no intention of engaging in a pointless battle with these people here and now. Tendo's slender hands slowly came together. Between his palms, an inky black sphere gradually took shape. The black sphere might appear small, but its suction power was terrifying. Instantly, a powerful, invisible gravitational force, centered around the black sphere, spread wildly in all directions. Surrounding houses, solid ground, and even some Konoha ninja who hadn't managed to avoid it were all involuntarily drawn in by this suction. The tiny black sphere was like a bottomless abyss, seemingly capable of swallowing everything in the world. Sensing the danger, the Konoha ninjas reacted quickly. They continuously channeled their chakra into their feet, attempting to anchor themselves to the ground or buildings. However, these efforts paled in the face of the black sphere's terrifying pull. Entire houses were uprooted, and vast tracts of land were lifted up. The ninjas caught in the gravity's pull died in agony before they could even reach the small black sphere, their internal organs crushed and their bodies twisted and deformed by the gravity's force. Attack that black ball, Tsunade, anxious, gave the order decisively. A variety of ninjutsu rained down on Tendo like a torrential rain: fire jutsu, water jutsu, lightning jutsu, a dazzling fusion of light. However, to their dismay, all the ninjutsu vanished like a stone upon contact with a black ball, easily devoured, leaving Tendo's clothing untouched. Several Hyuga clan ninjas attempted to launch a surprise attack from the flank, leveraging the Byakugan's unique insight. However, before they could even reach Tendo, they were distracted by the powerful gravitational pull surrounding the black ball, stalling and ultimately being devoured. Hand over the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. This is your last chance, Weiss commanded Tendo, coldly issuing a final ultimatum. Don't even think about it. Tsunade refused without hesitation, her eyes filled with determination and resoluteness, as if declaring to Weiss that she would defend Konoha village in Naruto to the death. Then disappear. Weiss didn't hesitate. With a single command, the black sphere in Tendo's hand rapidly expanded, expanding from the size of a ping-pong ball to the size of a basketball in the blink of an eye. The sphere's gravity grew even stronger, its influence instantly spreading across Konoha village. Instantly, countless objects and countless ninja were mercilessly drawn into the sphere, plunging Konoha village into a swirling abyss of chaos and despair. Stop. Witnessing this, Tsunade, overcome with grief, gritted her teeth, quickly formed hand seals, and released the yin seal. Instantly, a surge of powerful chakra erupted from her like a surging tide, and mysterious patterns appeared across her body, emitting a dazzling light. Recklessly, she rushed towards Tendo. Though her body was constantly ravaged by the terrifying pull of gravity, her skin tore and her bones creaked. Tsunade, thanks to the yin seal's powerful healing power, quickly repaired her body after being damaged, and this cycle repeated itself over and over again. With each step closer to Tendo, the pull of gravity grew stronger. Every step Tsunade took seemed incredibly difficult, as if she were battling the power of the entire universe. But she didn't flinch. Tsunade's healing abilities were unparalleled in the ninja world, but compared to the Deadpool and Wolverine that Weiss knew well, they pale in comparison. Just reaching Tendo's presence nearly depleted Tsunade's chakra. Her body, constantly pulled by the immense gravity, looked so small and fragile standing before Tendo, like a toddler, vulnerable to being crushed by the overwhelming force. Chapter 422 Earth Explosion Star. Tsunade-sama, The Konoha ninjas looked at the teetering Tsunade in fear and concern. Her body, tugged at by the terrifying pull of the heavenly Dao, seemed so frail and fragile, as if a mere breeze could blow her down. Tsunade gritted her teeth, mustered her last ounce of strength, and punched a black ball that emanated the aura of death. With a crack, her fist was first warped by the gravity, and then her entire right arm was twisted into a knot, as if by an invisible giant hand. Seeing this terrifying force about to ripple through her entire body, Tsunade acted decisively in the nick of time. She formed a blade with her left hand and, without hesitation, slashed at her right arm at shoulder level, severing it with a clang. Fortunately, the wound healed instantly under the miraculous power of the 100 Healings technique, stopping the flow of blood. Your medical ninjutsu is only so-so. You can't even regenerate a severed limb, Tendo scoffed coldly. Then, opening his hand, an even stronger section force pulled Tsunade inward. He firmly grasped her neck, and Tsunade's feet left the ground as she struggled feebly. He intended to use this method to search her memories and obtain the location of Mount Myaboku. Hokage-sama, the other Konoha ninjas were distraught, watching helplessly as Tsunade fell into such dire straits. At this moment, simply stabilizing themselves and avoiding being sucked away by the powerful suction was their limit. Their eyes were filled with anger and resentment, yet they felt helpless. Weiss concentrated on using Tendo's abilities to search Tsunade's memories. However, to his disappointment, Tsunade's memories contained no coordinates from Mount Myaboku. The toads of Mount Myaboku maintained a meticulously confidential system. Even ninjas contracted with them could only reach Mount Myaboku through reverse summoning techniques, without knowing its exact location. You're useless. Tendo's right hand, like a sharp blade, pierced Tsunade's chest. Wow! Tsunade spat out a mouthful of blood, which splattered across Tendo's black robe, making it particularly dazzling. Jiraiya, Naruto. In this moment of life, Tsunade seemed to see the figures of Jiraiya and Naruto, the people she cherished most. Just then, a sharp pain surged through her chest again. In the nick of time, Jiraiya and Naruto arrived. Working in perfect harmony, they successfully rescued Tsunade from Tendo's clutches. Tsunade, Jiraiya shouted her name, his voice filled with anxiety and concern. Grandma, Naruto was equally distraught, tears glistening in his eyes. Leave it to me. The slug quickly lay on Tsunade's hollow chest and performed a healing jutsu. A soft light emanated from the slug's body, enveloping Tsunade's wound. Shrouded in this light, Tsunade blearily opened her eyes. How is she? Jiraiya asked anxiously. She's been saved for now, but she needs immediate surgery, the slug replied, a hint of fatigue in his voice. Tsunade-sama, Sakura rushed over. Without hesitation, she scooped up Tsunade and ran. At this moment, she knew that Tsunade's care was paramount, everything else must be put aside. Seeing Tsunade safely carried away by Sakura, Jiraiya and Naruto felt a sense of relief. They slowly turned around and took in the ruins of Konoha village. Streets were razed to the ground, houses collapsed, and countless dead Konoha ninjas lay scattered across the ground, their blood staining the ground red. Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief. Asshole! What have you done? Naruto roared angrily, his voice echoing through the ruins. However, Tendo didn't respond. His target had been found, and there was no need for further words. Tendo quickly formed hand seals and chanted, Chibaku Tensei. He thrust a black ball into the air with all his might. Gravitational force intensified again, instantly sucking Naruto and Jiraiya, who were closest to him, into the air. Furthermore, the ground seemed to be pulled apart from below by a giant hand, vast tracts of earth were lifted up, and the entire village of Konoha was sucked up into the sky by this terrifying suction. Seeing this, the Konoha ninjas tried their best to resist this force. They performed various ninjutsu, but it was all in vain. Their efforts seemed insignificant before the terrifying gravitational pull of the Chibaku Tensei. Even the mysterious and treacherous root organization, hidden beneath Konoha's underground, was not spared in this devastating catastrophe. The root's complex stronghold, buried deep underground, was forcibly uprooted by the terrifying gravitational pull of the Chibaku Tensei. The meticulously crafted underground passages, secret chambers, and the various facilities hidden within were ripped from the surface, swept up in a whirlpool of destruction amidst a shower of earth and rock. Instantly, a colossal object floated into the sky. This massive sphere, formed from the entire mass of Konoha village that had been sucked up. From the sky, a massive crater appeared at the side of Konoha, its vastness and regular shape as if blasted by a massive meteorite. The earth around the crater twisted in irregular patterns, and cracks spread outward like hideous scars. However, Weiss's cruelty and determination were beyond imagination. Even this devastating blow seemed far from enough to him. He sensed the lingering presence of life within the sphere. Some ninja had stubbornly survived. Despite their desperate situation, they refused to give up hope and racked their brains, devising a way to escape. Some supported each other, using ninjutsu to reinforce the space around them to prevent themselves from being crushed to death. Others struggled to find a weak spot in the sphere, hoping to break free. But Weiss wouldn't give them that chance. Tendao slowly raised his right arm, aiming it at the massive sphere floating in the air. Then, he began to clench his fist. As he did so, the sphere slowly contracted inward. Under this immense pressure, the already dense material squeezed and fused together, shrinking in size while its strength grew exponentially. The immense pressure, like a tidal wave, instantly engulfed every inch of the sphere. The ninjas felt as if countless mountains were bearing down on them simultaneously, their bodies unable to withstand the terrifying force. Bones cracked with heart-wrenching cracks under the weight, their internal organs deformed, and blood gushed from their mouths and noses. Under this relentless pressure, many ninjas perished in excruciating agony, their vibrant life force gradually fading. The ninjas, who had been struggling to survive, gradually fell into despair in the face of this irresistible force. Their cries and calls for help were drowned out by the terrifying pressure. Chapter 423 Joining Forces. Senjutsu Supergiant Rasengan, two Jiraiya and Naruto, master and disciple, radiated powerful Senjutsu chakra. The two enormous Rasengan in their hands spun fiercely, like two suns radiating brilliant light. They poured their unreserved Senjutsu power into the sphere, simultaneously hurling their Rasengan into the massive sphere that trapped them. Instantly, a terrifying impact erupted from within the sphere, a devastating force like a tsunami, raging unchecked. The sphere, formed from countless lumps of earth, rocks, and building debris, instantly crumbled under the impact. Huge chunks of rock plummeted from the sky like meteorites, crashing to the ground with a whistling sound and sending up clouds of dust. Of the many Konoha ninjas originally trapped within the sphere, only a few of the strongest survived. Kakashi and Danzo, two renowned figures in the ninja world, were now in dire straits. Their successful escape from the sphere had undoubtedly come at a terrible price. Blood trickled from Kakashi's left eye, the after effect of overusing the powerful yet physically demanding Kamui technique. His eyes betrayed fatigue, yet his resolve remained undiminished. Meanwhile, Danzo's right arm was densely covered with transplanted Sharingan, a strange sight that sent a chill through the air. Wind-style, vacuum great ball, Danzo took a deep breath, channeling a vast amount of chakra into his mouth. Then, he violently unleashed a high-pressure wind sphere. Like a whistling cannonball, it whistled sharply as it shot straight at Tendo. However, Tendo simply stood still, easily deflecting Danzo's seemingly powerful attack. Summoning Jutsu, seeing this, Danzo unhesitatingly formed a hand seal. With a puff of smoke rising, the massive form of the Nightmare Taper appeared before everyone. The Nightmare Taper opened its mouth wide, using the power of wind style to second devour everything in front of it. Instantly, the surrounding sand, rocks, and dust were swept into its maw. Using the Nightmare Taper's cover, Danzo darted towards Tendo like a ghost. He had already planned to use the powerful illusion of Kido Matsukami to control Tendo. He believed that the power displayed by Tendo was beyond imagination. If he could control it, not only could he become Hokage, but even unify the entire ninja world would be possible. The thought of this filled Danzo's heart with passion, his ambitions amplified. However, Danzo was not a man of few thoughts. The 10 Sharingan implanted in his right arm provided the foundation for his actions. Each Sharingan he used granted him 1 minute of I's energy. This meant he was invincible for 10 minutes, free to act freely and fear no attack. Frog in a well, Weiss observed Danzo's thoughts. In his eyes, Danzo's ideal is nothing but wishful thinking. Danzo had no idea that the Tendo before him was merely a puppet. Even if he could control him, he would be unable to reach his true core. Jiraiya and Naruto naturally observed the terrifying Sharingan on Danzo's arm. But now, facing a formidable enemy, they knew that infighting would only worsen the situation. So, the master and disciple chose to temporarily put aside their doubts. Senpo Gomen, Jiraiya quickly formed hand seals and unleashed a powerful stream of flame. This ninjutsu, a fusion of fire escape and senjutsu, instantly transformed into a raging sea of fire, engulfing Tendo. Senpo Shuriken. Naruto then launched another attack. The Shuriken, formed from Senjutsu chakra, flashed with dazzling light, like a brilliant star, streaking through the sky towards Tendo. However, Hungry Ghost Path, like a ghost, quickly blocked Tendo's path and absorbed all the ninjutsu from both master and disciple. After Weiss's transformation, Hungry Ghost Path could absorb not only ordinary ninjutsu energy but also senjutsu energy, transferring this absorbed energy to Shura Path. As Shura Path absorbed the energy, its body rapidly transformed. It opened its right hand and aimed it at Jiraiya. Energy rapidly converged within its hand, forming a dazzling beam of light. Oh no, Jiraiya thought to himself. Before he could react, a laser beam shot towards him like lightning. Its speed was so swift, it left no room for any evasive action. In the nick of time, Kamui, Kakashi unleashed a ninjutsu, transmitting the deadly laser beam into the Kamui dimension. Thank you, Jiraiya, having narrowly escaped death, breathed a sigh of relief and gave Kakashi a grateful look. However, the danger was not over. Human Path suddenly emerged from the ground beneath Kakashi's feet, holding a black iron spike. Like a bolt of black lightning, it pierced Kakashi's chest. Kakashi's chakra had been depleted after 2 consecutive Kamui attacks, and his body was under immense strain. His steps were slow, and his reflexes were less sharp than usual. Seeing this, he could only cross his arms over his chest, attempting to block the fatal blow. Puff! The iron spikes easily pierced Kakashi's arms, and blood gushed out instantly. Furthermore, the impact of the blow had disrupted Kakashi's chakra, making it impossible to further refine it. Kakashi stumbled, half kneeling on the ground, his body precarious. Ah! A scream rang out. Human Path cruelly thrust 2 fingers into Kakashi's eye sockets, roughly plucked out the Sharingan, and then placed it in a pre-prepared test tube. Weiss was extremely interested in the Sharingan and intended to study it thoroughly. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto shouted, his voice filled with anger and grief. At this moment, Danzo was less than 10 meters away from Tendo. However, the Shura Path and the Hungry Ghost Path stood before him like 2 mountains. Seeing this, Danzo's eyes flashed with determination. He slowly closed a Sharingan on his arm, and activated Izanagi. As the 3 of them clashed, the Shura Path's attacks came like a torrential downpour, instantly severing Danzo's head. But the next second, fueled by Izanagi's power, Danzo passed the 2 men unscathed and continued his charge towards Tendo. Danzo swiftly removed the bandage covering his right eye, intending to activate Kido Matsukami to control Tendo. Shinra Tensei, Tendo suddenly unleashed a powerful repulsive force, sending Danzo flying hundreds of meters, his body shattered and battered. But Danzo refused to give up. Without hesitation, he slashed his own throat with a kunai. With the help of Izanagi's power, a completely intact Danzo reappeared, his second Sharingan closing. Chapter 424, Other Gods. Danzo's face instantly turned livid, like the gloomy sky before a storm. All his men had perished in the Chibaku Tensei. Those who had fought alongside him through thick and thin, serving him for all eternity, now vanished in this devastation, weighed heavily on Danzo's heart. Many battle plans were thus thwarted. Elsewhere, Kakashi, aided by Naruto's clones, frantically dodged the relentless attacks of the Human Path. Their attacks were fierce and relentless. Though experienced, Kakashi was now nearly depleted of chakra, his body scarred by previous battles, and he could only manage with Naruto's help. Hold them back, Danzo commanded Jiraiya and Naruto bluntly, his tone unmistakable and unyielding. In his eyes, Jiraiya and Naruto were merely tools to achieve his own ends, and he would do anything to achieve his ambitions. Why should I listen to you? Naruto exclaimed angrily, his eyes blazing with anger at Danzo's overbearing behavior. However, Jiraiya stopped Naruto in time. Regardless of Danzo's character, regardless of his selfish motives, he was still a member of Konoha. At this critical moment, Konoha's survival depended on the greater good. Jiraiya quickly formed seals with his hands. In an instant, countless hair-thin yet steel-hard needles swept towards Shirado and Hungry Ghost Path at breakneck speed. This technique was the fastest and most extensive of Jiraiya's techniques, enveloping Shirado and Hungry Ghost Path in the blink of an eye. These needles were purely physical attacks, rendering Hungry Ghost Path's ability to absorb ninjutsu energy useless. Shirado and Hungry Ghost Path reacted quickly. Hungry Ghost Path dodged and hid behind Shirado, seeking protection. Shirado, drawing on his immense mechanical transformation abilities, instantly transformed his right arm into a massive shield, completely shielding the two. The needles clashed with the shield, making a dense clanging sound, but they were unable to penetrate and harm them. Taking advantage of this moment, Danzo swiftly charged towards Tendu. His eyes gleamed with a frenzy, his single thought, to control Tendu and harness this immense power. Summoning technique. Seeing this, the animal path quickly summoned it with hand seals. A massive panda descended from the sky like a falling meteor, careening towards Danzo. Danzo reacted quickly, dodging the panda's attack with a nimble movement. Dream Taper, Danzo shouted, and the Dream Taper, hearing the summons, charged towards the animal path's summoned panda. The two summoned beasts engaged in a scuffle. Seeing the situation was dire, Animal Path attempted to summon another beast, but Danzo was even faster. Wind Style, Vacuum Blade, Danzo poured a steady stream of Wind Style chakra into the kunai in his hand. A razor-sharp wind blade instantly condensed from the kunai, forming an invisible yet incredibly sharp sword. Danzo swung the kunai fiercely, and a shimmering wind blade whistled out, precisely severing the Animal Path's arm. Without his arm, the Animal Path could no longer form hand seals, and naturally, no longer use summoning techniques. Now, Danzo was unstoppable. He drew closer to Tendao, his excitement growing uncontrollable. With just one glance, he could use Kido Matsukami to control this powerful enemy and realize his ambition. Everything was just as Danzo had envisioned. Tendao had fallen for Kido Matsukami's illusion. Success! Danzo was overjoyed, a triumphant smile on his face. He eagerly gave Tendao the unwavering command, "Hold your attack." Upon hearing the command, Tendao froze in his tracks. Danzo gloated inwardly. Finally, his long-cherished ambition seemed about to be realized. However, just as Danzo was basking in the joy of victory, a soft swish sounded, and a black thorn pierced through his back and chest. Danzo's eyes widened, a look of disbelief on his face. Jigakudo, who had remained silent, now attacked. Why? Danzo was filled with confusion. In his mind, Deva Path was the core of Pain's 6 paths, and if he controlled Deva Path, he could control all of them. But he had never imagined that the 6 paths were actually independent entities, not as he had imagined, where simply controlling Deva Path would guarantee everything. I still have the Sharingan, and Izanagi. A flicker of hope flashed through Danzo's mind, and with the power of Izanagi, he was revived once more. But this time, Danzo did not continue his attack, but turned and fled. In the brief exchange, Danzo had deeply assessed the disparity in strength between the two sides. In just a few minutes, he had already expended 3 Sharingan spheres. Continuing the battle would undoubtedly lead to his own death. Moreover, he remembered that Konoha's reconstruction would require his strength. He could not die so easily. Danzo kept finding excuses to cover up his desertion. "Protect me!" Danzo, utterly terrified, shouted orders at Tendo, who he had controlled with Kido Matsukami. He was like a frightened bird, consumed by the fear of death. However, he never imagined that while Tendo, under his control, appeared to obey his commands, he was actually a mere puppet, incapable of unleashing the might of powerful techniques like Shinra Tensei and Manso Tenin. Seeing this, Jigakudo's lips curled up slightly in a sneer of disdain. He quickly formed hand seals, and amidst a puff of thick smoke, the massive, sinister figure of the Hell King slowly emerged. Hell King's body was pitch black, emanating a chilling aura. His eyes were like 2 balls of blazing flames, radiating an endless eeriness. Hell King slowly extended his massive arm, like the Grim Reaper's scythe, effortlessly grasping Tendo and the armless Zhao Shengdao, then tossing them into his mouth. Then, there was a heart-pounding chewing sound. Unbelievably, the Heavenly Path and the Animal Path actually walked out of the King of Hell's mouth intact, as if everything that had just happened was just an illusory nightmare. Afterwards, the figure of the King of Hell gradually dissipated, as if he had never appeared. Danzo, Kakashi, Naruto, Jiraiya and others watched this scene with their own eyes, their hearts filled with shock and fear, their faces instantly becoming extremely ugly. They are all puppets. Danzo was like being struck by lightning, and a flash of inspiration came into his mind. His face showed an expression of both shock and realization, and he shouted loudly, "These 6 people are all puppets, and the real body is controlling them from a distance." Chapter 425 Continuous. Under the control of Kido Matsukami's powerful illusion, a technique worthy of divine power, Tendo appeared vulnerable. Furthermore, it easily broke free from Kido Matsukami's restraints. The truth was revealed, the 6 paths of pain were puppets controlled by others. Jiraiya also realized that the 6 paths of pain were merely puppets. A name flashed through his mind like lightning: Nagato. As long as the crucial puppet, Jigakudo, existed, the 6 paths of pain could endlessly resurrect. In such a dire situation, the only way to truly defeat pain was to find and defeat the true form hidden behind the scenes. But where could it be hidden? I found it, then let's end this boring game. Tendo slowly stretched out his arms, like a grim reaper spreading its massive wings to harvest life, aiming at Kakashi and Jiraiya. Ten Xiong Ten Yuan, a terrifying suction force, like a black hole, suddenly erupted, sweeping madly towards Kakashi and Jiraiya. Jiraiya reacted with lightning speed. In this critical moment, he unhesitatingly entrenched his chakra in the ground, steadying himself like a giant tree rooted in the earth, resisting the terrifying suction. However, Kakashi's chakra had been nearly depleted from his previous ninjutsu. Faced with a powerful suction, his body was like a fluttering leaf, powerless and mercilessly pulled away. Jiraiya acted decisively. His hair seemed to come alive, growing and spreading at an astonishing rate, like an incredibly strong rope, precisely wrapping around Kakashi's waist, preventing him from being sucked directly into the heavenly path. Naruto witnessed this scene, his heart pounding. Without hesitation, he rushed towards Kakashi and Jiraiya, seeking their support. However, the human path and the hungry ghost path stood like two impenetrable barriers blocking his path. "Get out of the way," Naruto roared angrily. Activating Sage Mode, each punch he delivered was powerful and devastating. The hungry ghost path, undeterred, instead advanced on Naruto, engaging him in a fierce close-quarters battle. If they could even manage to touch Naruto, they could completely absorb his chakra, effectively ending the battle. Meanwhile, within Naruto's body, the Nine Tails keenly sensed the terrifying power of the Rinnegan and, sensing the enemy's intentions, grew restless. They possessed the Rinnegan of the 6 Paths Sage. The Nine Tails was filled with shock and fear. It knew full well the power contained within the Rinnegan, a terrifying entity capable of altering the very fabric of the world. They recovered the tail beasts in order to resurrect the 10 Tails. The enemy's ultimate goal was to resurrect a legendary 10 Tails. If the 10 Tails were resurrected, its own existence as a tail beast would cease to exist, a fate it could never accept. Senjutsu Lion Frenzy, Jiraiya seized the opportunity. His long white hair, fueled by the powerful Senjutsu chakra, pierced the heavenly path like countless sharp needles. Under the pull of the universal heavenly attraction, the long hairs sped even faster. Buzz, a chilling, sawing sound suddenly echoed. Shirato stood before Tendo, his weapon spinning rapidly, severing every strand of hair Jiraiya had thrust at him. Then, his body suddenly unfolded, revealing a dense array of weapons, like a terrifying monster with countless tentacles. It locked onto Jiraiya and Kakashi. Swish, swish, shells rained down upon the two, instantly engulfing them in a sea of flames. Flames shot skyward, and thick smoke billowed into the air. After the explosion, Jiraiya and Kakashi were left battered, their bodies covered in blood and wounds. Shirato's attacks didn't cease. A dazzling laser beam shot from his chest, accurately striking Kakashi. The beam pierced Kakashi's heart, sending blood gushing out like a fountain. Kakashi's body instantly stiffened, a flicker of pain and resentment in his eyes. "Kakashi!" Jiraiya cried out in agony, filled with endless pain and reluctance. Although he had experienced countless life and death experiences and witnessed the fall of countless outstanding ninja throughout his long shinobi career, at this moment, seeing the life of his outstanding junior falter like a candle in the wind, his heart was still struck by a hammer, a pain that pierced his heart. "You've revealed a flaw." Just as Jiraiya was lost in pain, Tendo's cold and merciless voice suddenly echoed in his ears, like the whisper of a demon. Jiraiya's heart trembled, and without hesitation, he made the most correct decision: distance himself. However, it was too late. Shinra Tensei, a repulsive force, centered at Tendo, crushed towards Jiraiya like a tsunami. Jiraiya felt as if a towering mountain were bearing down on him, the force so overwhelming that it stifled his breath. Under the impact of this terrifying force, Jiraiya's internal organs shattered in an instant, and intense pain spread throughout his body like an electric current. He couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood, which turned into bloody mist in the air. Swish, Shirato launched a sneak attack from behind. The sharp teeth of the saw, with a cold gleam, pierced through his chest at an extremely fast speed. This sudden and fatal blow dealt Jiraiya another heavy blow. Wow, he spat out another mouthful of blood, and the world before him suddenly became blurry. Jiraiya's body was about to collapse. He struggled to raise his head and looked at Tendo's expressionless face. His lips trembled slightly as he whispered, "Yohiko, Nagato." At this moment, his mind flashed through the faces of his disciples like a slideshow, and images of their training and battles together came flooding back. Finally, the picture froze on Naruto's bright smile. "Naruto," Jiraiya silently chanted the name in his mind. Among his disciples, Naruto was initially considered the most clueless, lacking the gifted prowess and innate strength and keen perception of his father, Minato Namake's. However, Naruto never failed to surprise. Through his unwavering perseverance and relentless spirit, he quickly mastered Sage Mode. A move that both pleased and humbled Jiraiya. Determined not to lose to Naruto, and even more so to protect him in crucial moments, Jiraiya began training day and night, ultimately achieving the ability to enter Sage Mode independently. Recalling the moments of training and life with Naruto, the laughter and tears, the setbacks and growth, all seemed to come alive before his eyes. A warmth and contentment welled up in Jiraiya's heart. My life hasn't been bad. With that thought, he slowly closed his eyes. Like a tree snapped by a fierce wind, his body collapsed helplessly on the land he loved, ending his legendary and eventful life. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.